peer-reviewed research, they have posted a quote by von Neumann that states that this should occur at all is a miracle. But I also want to go back to the fact that natural machines, it would have been arising for 4.5 billion years, and then just in the past 100,000 years we had humans, and just in the past 1,000 years we had created machines. And so there is no reason to think that anything like our genetic code or our mind or our brain or anything like this has to come from a designer, has to come from a supernatural source, or that it leads to a god. Also, welcome, TJump.
Also, it has to be stated that using terms like digital and using terms like analog when you're describing biological processes, this is an abuse of language. Words are, the words that we use in our lexicons are nebulous. And like, just for example, using the term observation in colloquial terms, using the term observation in a scientific term mean two totally different things. So, like code, like computer code and genetic code analogous, you're just abusing language there. So that's incorrect, and you should not do that.
Testing.
So the other big thing is that, like Amy was pointing out, there's discrepancies there in the quotes that you've put out, but you said so much in that response, and you brought up a bunch of other points. There was one particular thing that I wanted to respond to. What the heck did you say? Other than the watchmaker fallacy that you asserted again. You know what? Someone pick it up, because I got to try and remember. Oh, it was one of the early points that you made. Go ahead, TJump, if you had something to say.
Well, I didn't come in for any of his opening, but I can pretty much guess what he normally says. Quotes aren't evidence, so it doesn't matter what quotes you present that say miracle in them, unless they have like an actual proof of what miracles are and what is required for a miracle. The fact that they have an intuition that they think a miracle is required isn't evidence, so it doesn't matter what any quote you provide actually says. You need actual evidence. Quotes are not evidence.
Yeah, and the quote sounded like he was just saying, hey, this seems like a miracle. He wasn't saying this is actually a miracle, because there would be a lot that would come with that.
Yeah, Taco, I don't think that we need to ask for proofs. What we need is what is the most plausible narrative to explain the phenomena in question. Now, Amy, you said twice.
Well, what phenomenon in question are you talking about?
About the fact that in life it is instructional assembly or codified complex specified information which directs the making of molecular machines and factories. And that state of affairs, in my understanding, is best explained by the action of an intelligent engineer which conceptualizes in his mind these artifacts and then instantiates both the blueprint and the information transmission system, which then actualizes and instantiates these machines and factories.
Tangelo, when our DNA is actually putting in 4 different characters, it is actually making codons. Can I ask you, do you think that it is our genes doing this, or do you think it's God?
Well, Amy, you previously talked about the genetic code. Could you, in quick terms, explain what the genetic code is?
I would say we have 4 different symbols that we have as letters, and that we are, well, I say we, that our genetics creates words, codons, in 3 different symbols that creates our body.
Okay, that is not the correct answer, Amy. The codons, they have an assignment to amino acids, like AUG, for example, is a stop codon. That is the genetic table. What does it? The messenger RNA, which stores, can I finish, please? No, can I finish, please? The messenger RNA stores information through genetic words, which are these codons, and 3 nucleotides, they are assigned to 1 amino acids. We have 64 different codons, and they are assigned to 20 amino acids. And in a translation, what happens? The messenger RNA goes into the ribosome. There, the tRNA anticodon then, which will indicate to the amino acid tRNA synthetase which amino acid that has to be added to the polymerase chain. And it will then be picked amongst these 20 amino acids and added to the elongation of the amino acid chain. So what we have is an assignment of meaning. And I can give you an analogy here. For example, you have a translation book from English to Chinese.
That's not
And
analogous.
the word,
I'm
and
sorry,
the
that's
word,
not analogous.
can I finish, please?
No,
And the
Tangelo,
word,
I'm sorry, no, Tangelo, we've already been down this road. We've
He also
been
didn't
down this.
answer my question.
Yeah,
I
Tangelo,
am
we've been down this road
answering
before.
your
No,
question.
Tangelo, we've been down this road before. These are not analogous. You are abusing language on this. But nonetheless, what you completely glossed over one very, very important point is that you speak about this process of the replication of DNA. You speak about this process as though it is flawless. Now, in your worldview, and I've heard you state before that God is perfect, okay? And the process of DNA replication is not a perfect process. It is not perfect and it is not efficient. Okay? So the problem is that you're essentially stating that a perfect being can create imperfectly. But because the process of DNA replication does not happen flawlessly every single time. In fact, it fails a grand amount of time. In fact,
Yeah,
there are
you
problems
just-
all over the place. So how can your perfect being in your worldview create something imperfectly?
Yeah, you just hijacked my dialogue with Amy. It wasn't about what you're asking. I was answering to her what actually the function of the genetic code is. So I would like to finish my conversation.
You don't
with
need to
Amy.
because we understand genetics, Otangelo. You do not.
No,
This
you
is
actually
this is
don't.
not.
No, you
Otangelo,
actually don't. You have no clue
Yes, we
about
do.
genetics.
Otangelo, this is not the opportunity for you to try and school us. We've been to school. Okay.
You have not. You have shown it times and times
Hey,
again.
come on,
You
we're
just
not going to
think you're
insult
right.
people
Can I just
either way. Have a conversation or get off the stage.
reiterate? DNA. There are letters. We have A, C, G, T. Those make words in 3-letter combinations and codons. The question I asked was, is it our genes doing this, our biology, or is it God?
Well, I think that God instantiated life at the beginning, Amy, and then he actually just left life on its own to self-replicate and to thrive. Now, if you think that God was not necessary, hey, be my guest and explain how assignment of meaning, like a codon like AUG assigned to a stop sign, which indicates to the machinery to stop translation, how that state of affairs of assigning meaning could not come from a mind.
What is this meaning that you're talking about? Because you're using this term and no one else uses it. It's not assigning meaning to anything.
It's physical. It's not.
I am
want to answer the
using
question.
strictly scientific terms, JL, and there is an assignment or a mapping of 64 codons, triple nucleotides, to 20 amino acids. That is what the genetic code is. If you don't know it, please go and educate yourself and look it up.
Tangelo, the way it stops is it's a physical marker. So there's a physical bond and a physical connection that causes it to stop. So it's just like the end of a river is a giant rock. It's not actually giving meaning to anything. There's no meaning there. It's literally just a physical interaction, like a switch.
TJump, what is the function of the genetic code?
There's lots of functions, and they're all physical.
So
Every single one of them.
So you don't know.
No, that's
just explained it to Amy because she didn't know it.
Tangelo, there is no meaning.
Less.
There is no meaning in the DNA. It's all physical. It's a physical interaction, physical bonds, physical levers. There's no meaning that is required.
Yeah, I find it deeply strange that you keep inserting this word like it has some sort of like that it has meaning when I think it has results. There are results. There are physical results that come from this process taking place. But you're trying to ascribe some sort of like extraneous meaning or agential purpose to it, which doesn't exist. And I don't know why you're doing this.
I said assignment, JL. There is an assignment of codons to amino acids. That is a fact.
That's physical interaction. Fact. So it's not meaning. That's just a physical interaction.
It's chemistry.
It happens through a physical interaction, TJump. The question is why that state of affairs exists where a codon is assigned or mapped to amino acids. That was my question.
It exists because it's the process that produces life. If it didn't produce life, then it wouldn't be stable and it would fall apart and it wouldn't do anything.
It's also Oh no, continue. Sorry.
No, go. I'm sorry. Go ahead, Amy, please.
It's a natural way of data becoming information, but it's been going on for billions of years. We have just become a species that can actually make programming languages. And so I want to know, where is this guy? And I also want to know very specifically, is this what convinced you, Antangelo? Is this why you are a Christian?
Amy, when you see a blueprint on the table and you don't know how it was made, and it contains the precise instructions, sizes, materials, shapes, forms, and whatever is needed to make a machine. And you have two options there. Either there was intelligence involved to make that blueprint or there was not. Which of the two options do you think is the most case adequate explanation?
In a blueprint that was made by a design creature, it was designed because that's how it's set up. But if you're looking at a clogged river, you have to find out, was it a beaver or did it clog naturally?
Right. So we have an analogous situation, Amy, in genes where the sequence of nucleotides directs and instructs the making of a polymer chain of amino acids, which then will become a molecular machines, which are proteins. And if you don't have that specified complex sequence of amino acids, that strand, it will not fold in 3D form and then become functional. So the question is, where does that specified complex sequence of nucleotides or that information or instructional assembly and operation information come from? Either it was an intelligent mind or it was not. If you think no intelligent mind is required, be my guest and explain how non-intelligence can instantiate such specified complex sequences which are functional.
So I debunked this entire argument last time. Like, there's a thousand steps to creating life, and the hypothesis that can make novel testable predictions to explain any of the steps successfully is the better hypothesis. Naturalism has made successful testable predictions about many of the different steps. They don't need to explain every step, just any step at all, like explaining RNA forming on clay or corpuscles forming on clay, or just any step individually. If that's explained naturally and it was predicted by a naturalist hypothesis, that's evidence of naturalism. Intelligent design has predicted 0 steps. It was given a 0 explanation of any of the steps at all. So the better hypothesis is naturalism. That's just how it works. The one that makes the successful testable predictions is the better hypothesis. That means the only hypothesis that's reasonable for anyone in science to believe is the naturalist hypothesis. There's no evidence of design. That's why it's considered a pseudoscience. So your argument's debunked. The better hypothesis is the one that makes testable predictions, which is naturalism. Naturalism wins.
Okay, TJump, you are conflating what we are talking about. One thing is in regards
we absolutely did not.
Well, can I finish, please? So one thing is about the quest of where specified complex information or instructional assembly information comes from. Like
no, that's also a pseudoscience.
That is, can I finish, please? So that is one question. The other is, of course, how polymerization of nucleotides occur, which is what you addressed
No,
in our
Antangelo,
debate.
no,
Can I
Antangelo,
finish, please?
Antangelo.
I would
No,
like
no,
to
no, no,
finish.
no, no,
I
no,
would like. No, 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 no. You
no,
don't interrupt me. I am permitting
Antangelo,
everyone to make a
Antangelo,
case, and when you finish, then
Antangelo.
I answer. So you
You're
will
saying
not
stupid
interrupt me.
things,
You will
Antangelo.
not interrupt me.
Antangelo,
Teacher.
you're
I will
saying
overtalk you
no.
until you let me
We can
finish
just
my
mute you,
sentence.
Antangelo.
Okay, so
So
I leave I
okay,
leave the stage.
I would
That's
be, I'd
it.
appreciate
Either
it.
you
Run
But
away,
respect
run
me
away,
or I
Antangelo.
will.
Okay,
Antangelo,
No,
okay.
I'm
So
not
have a
running
back
away.
and
Antangelo.
forth, not this whatever's going on. Stop fighting. Have a back and forth.
So this applies to both.
I want to finish my sentence.
That's great. So Antangelo, my
I
statement applies
want
to
you
both.
to finish my
Antangelo,
sentence.
Antangelo,
I
stop.
want
is
you
gonna
to
finish your
permit me to
sentence.
finish my sentence.
Let Otangelo finish his sentence. It should only take a few seconds, and then you can continue to jump.
Angelo's not the most
No, I'm
decent
not
guy.
interested in listening to Antangelo
Thank
talk
you,
for another
thank you.
minute. What I said applies to both,
But
Antangelo.
I am not interested to listen to you either,
Can we just
TJump.
take him to? Let's move on.
Yeah,
to the
we'll
next
move
one.
on to
Yeah,
the next one then.
So,
Sorry about that.
Just to
so
repeat,
Hey,
what I said applies
before
to
we
both.
move on, I want to hear TJump, and then I have something to say.
So
Cool.
what I said, the scientific method of making predictions to explain hypothesis applies to both the origin of information and the origin of nucleotides. So it doesn't matter which one you go to. Both are best explained by naturalism. Both naturalism makes testable predictions which explain the hypothesis. Intelligent design makes zero. That's why it's pseudoscience. Applies to both. So until intelligent design starts making novel testable predictions, it's a pseudoscience. It explains nothing. You can't use it in science ever.
TJump, good morning. If you could
Hey.
increase your volume about 10 to 15%,
Hey,
you'd be
Amy.
right in line with the rest of us. I just want to say, Otangelo did start to talk about one thing that I'm glad that he got cut off on. It was about Chinese characters being proof of Christianity, and there's so many problems with that. They're
Testing.
religion by well over 4,000 years, and to say that the Chinese characters come from Christianity just doesn't make any sense at all. They make all kinds of mistakes like that. First of all, the timing issue. Another one is they'll take characters and pull off the radical small portions of the characters and ascribe meaning to them that it doesn't actually mean those things. So that's another fallacy that's created with that. If anybody's ever interested in looking into more of that, it's just search. A good place to start would be Rational Wiki's Hanzi of Genesis, and that's spelled Hanzi. And I'll post the link for that shortly. Thank you very much. What was that?
I remembered what I was going to bring up because at that moment, because he spewed so much stuff, he just gish galloped a whole bunch of information. But it was at the very, very beginning when I brought up that Francis Collins and the individual that he was quoting, that they pretty much stated their position that it was a matter of faith, and it was a leap of faith, and that reason and logic do not get you to a God, that you have to be willing to go there, make the emotional appeal, and they recognize its fallaciousness. They do. It's completely emotional. And then I brought up faith, and then he said that there's like a reasonable faith. And Otangelo, I don't know if you're still listening, but I wanted to respond to that, and because that was the biggest problem in everything you said is that no, there is no such thing as reasonable faith. There is reasonable confidence and there is reasonable trust. And confidence and trust are sliding scales based upon the evidence. You are conflating confidence/trust with faith. Okay? Faith is by definition irrational. It is not based upon evidence that can be collated, quantified, or tested, or or used to make predictions with. That is not how faith works. It is even recognized by early Iron Age philosophers that getting to these concepts requires the jump, because just looking at the world in itself does not get you there, does not get you to where you need to be. So that was the biggest issue there, is that if you rely upon faith, then you have no argument, because you're essentially stating that you have no evidence to support your claim. And that was the whole point, is to present the evidence that you have. And you immediately ended it when you said, it's faith, because there was no such thing as reasonable faith. So that was all I had.
Jill Warren, I'm curious, have you by any chance created a video on these distinctions or written an article about it?
Testing. Testing. Input sensitive. Close.
Realize that you're putting it in the wrong thing. That faith is wholly irrational. And while people can choose to have faith in things that they have no evidence for, which is fine, they need to be able to recognize and be intellectually honest about what faith is. So yeah, I touch on this multiple times whenever I'm covering somebody who brings up faith and that how important faith is. And of course, the biggest issue is that it's about confirmation bias. Essentially, what individuals like Otangelo are stating is that you have to believe in this thing first before you can find evidence for it. Is that I need to be, like they keep saying, like, you need to be open. You need to have an open mind. You need to have an open heart. You need to be able to approach this thing willing to see these things. It's like, well, if you entail that, if God requires that I believe in it first before I can find evidence for it, then that's extremely problematic, that your God would demand that I succumb to confirmation bias to justify my belief in it. And every time we get around to this, it's constantly put forward that your God requires the worst mistakes in human reasoning be made to justify a belief in its existence. Logical fallacies, confirmation bias, emotional appeals, arguments from incredulity, arguments from ignorance. None of this works. And yet your God requires it. Because if we take all of that out, if we say I'm not going to fall prey to this, and our methodology eliminates all of these fallacies and irrational and fallacious reasoning, then we don't get there. So why does this entity, as powerful and as loving as whatever it is, require that we eschew, in his worldview, from Otangelo's worldview, that we eschew all of the gifts of our brains to critically analyze evidence, to come up with methodologies that ensure that they are not biased, that we are doing things correctly and intellectually honest? Why does it require that we eschew all that in favor of the worst things? Why? That makes no sense. It makes no sense, especially if your God is all-knowing and would know that we would run into this problem in the future before it ever even created us. Which is a
Ready for
question
the next speaker.
I'm sorry. I'm sorry. Am I boring you, TJump?
A little bit.
I just wanted to say hello. I was a little bit late.
What's up,
but,
Peter?
hey, Amy. Really good to
just say
see you here.
one last, and I'll make it quick, is that it was very subtle. He's tried to sneak in abiogenesis. So the genes, well, they are doing their natural thing for the past 4 or 5 billion years, but God came in at like the very beginning, the end.
And
Amy, one quick addition to your question that he didn't answer. He refuses to answer. When you asked him, is this why you believe? No, it's not. And that is the part that he will never want to talk about.
It's also really, really weird that, he rejects abiogenesis when he doesn't think that God is living matter. So he thinks that God is some metaphysical brain without a body that exists out there beyond time, space, and reality, and that it created life. Well, technically, abiogenesis is life from non-living matter. So from something, life from non-life. So that technically is abiogenesis, which is weird. And then he says, no, it's not abiogenesis. I reject that. I don't know what his reasoning is. So go ahead, on to the next person.
Yeah,
I
so
know, but he won't talk about it.
Eutychus.
Yeah, Eutychus is kind of related to the last 5 minutes you were talking, J.L. Warren. So he was discussing with me in PM's evidence. What is your standard of evidence? I'll let him take over from there.
Yeah, it doesn't even need to have a back and forth unless you guys want to, I guess. But just to be clear, like, I'm not an apologist. I usually avoid conversations with people arguing in favor of atheism because those conversations tend to go in like an academic philosophical direction, and that's just not a domain I can really speak fluently in.
Well, I just want to interject. Can I just interject for a moment here? Just say we're not arguing for atheism. We're addressing the matter of whether a god or a goddess exists being presented here.
Sure. I'm just saying that in general, I avoid those kinds of conversations. So I'm not like I'm not an apologist in that sense, right? And I'm not.
Okay. I see what you're getting at. No problem. I just wanted to clarify that. Okay.
Yeah, so I'm not really like trying to argue a point necessarily here. I'm more interested in like clarifying the framework of a discussion like this. because obviously I still hear questions like, how do you justify what you
Go.
believe in, or what is the proof that God exists, right? And it feels kind of like a trick question to me, because I have no idea what exactly would qualify as evidence for people. I was not raised in a faith, and I was militantly agnostic for nearly 2 decades. And the thing that brought me to Christianity is pretty subtle and based entirely around personal experiences, which I doubt I could ever adequately explain in words to another person, especially not a stranger who knows nothing about me. But I do know that if during that time that I was agnostic, that if like a blinding light appeared to me and spoke to me saying, this is God and this is what you should do, that I would have run, and I would have been convinced that I was going crazy, and I would not have thought that it was God. And I would still be very skeptical of any similar experience now, being a Christian, like that. Just automatically I get red flags if something like that were to happen. So I'm just wondering what exactly would qualify as evidence to any of you, and how would you be able to recognize it if that evidence were to be presented?
The same thing that qualifies as evidence in any scientific field.
Can I just point out that the term militant agnostic is really funny? I mean, I'm sorry if anything happened, but
Amy, my
I was in the
live
sense
chat,
that like I don't know, and neither do you.
my live chat pointed it out.
I think that's actually quite a good definition of it.
The issue, the thing about evidence is that obviously, things that when evidence is presented, we can test it, we can make hypotheses with it, we can make novel testable predictions with it. This is exactly what TJump said. It's how we would handle any evidence given something that is presented as evidence for any other claim. And when we apply, and methodology to that, then we can eliminate something that is proposed as evidence. We say, no, this is not evidence for it, or it's not good evidence for it, or it's insufficient evidence for it. So, but when it comes to like what evidence out there would convince us, the problem is that when you're presented evidence for a claim, the evidence seems to support that claim, it opens up more questions. So there's also the matter of, if a big super powerful entity showed up and said, hey, I'm God, and it was like, oh, wow. And it looks and appears like God and like that. Well, just because it does that mean that it's God? No, it doesn't mean that it's automatically God. It could just be a sufficiently powerful enough entity claiming to be God. Also, how would we know that this being is lying? So there's more questions there. So what evidence would convince us? Like automatically and outright, I can only speak for myself. I honestly don't know. But if the God exists and it has the attributes that you think that it does, then it does. It knows what evidence would convince me outright, immediately, automatically, and it has yet thus far refused to give that evidence. So,
well, as far as like testing it the same way we test anything else, like I'm presuming here that if that means like that there's some if we discover something that goes against everything we know about the laws of physics or something like that, we're just going to assume that we don't know everything yet about physics, and we'll have to wait until we have an answer for this. It's not like there's going to be something that is going to happen that would be like, oh, this is God, because we don't even have a definition for what that is, right? Scientifically. So if we're just speaking scientifically, like, how do you find something you don't have a definition for?
Well, novel testable prediction. Well, you can't find something you don't have a definition for, but we do have a definition for God. So how we would find something is you make novel predictions. If God exists, when you die, you're going to meet him at the pearly gates. That would be great evidence. That's when that happens. So making novel predictions about things is pretty easy. The reason Christians haven't is because all the religions who have were falsified. So it's only the religions that don't make novel testable predictions that haven't been falsified.
Just to piggyback off what TJump said, in the Old Testament, God was doing empirically verifiable shit all the time. He was going around kicking butt, taking names, taking nations. And those types of events would be verifiable. And yet, for some reason, as our ability to become more scientifically literate has increased, God's appearances have decreased.
Yeah, I guess I'm just curious, like, I mean, the example you gave, like, after death appearing at the pearly gates, TJump, is something obviously by definition that we could never experience or test in this world while we're alive. And that's kind of like the point I'm getting at here.
Well, it doesn't matter. Novel testable predictions don't have to be about this life. If it's novel, just means it's new. Testable prediction just means a thing you expect to happen after some experiment. So if death is your experiment and you expect after death you will have a particular kind of an experience, and that particular kind of experience happens, that's a novel testable prediction. They don't have to happen after death. The only reason that most of the predictions are after death is because that's the only kinds you can't falsify them and then come back and say your religion's been debunked. So that's a problem with Christianity, not a problem with science. So your hypothesis, whatever it is, God, leprechauns, fairies, would need to make novel testable predictions, and then those things would need to be confirmed after an experiment, and that's what would count as evidence. It's just answering your evidence question.
Okay, that's fair. Thank you.
Any other questions, or is that sufficient?
Can I ask what convinced you? Is there some knockout reason that puts you in the theist camp?
I think he mentioned personal experience.
Beat me to
earlier.
it.
Ah, gotcha.
Well, I don't, like I said, I don't know if I could even words, but I mean, it was based around the transformation I saw in a person, and I also kind of always like had an intuition that there was order in the universe, and there's a reason for that order. Now, you know, that right there, that sentence is going to trigger a line of responses that I have no interest in responding to, because it's going to get like, I'm not here defending what I believe in necessarily. I'm just telling you because you asked.
One quick question. It's probably not the transformation. I mean, we have Amy here, but it's probably something different. Can I ask what the transformation was?
Well,
If you don't want to say that's okay too. I mean,
it's subtle enough that I don't think I could really explain. I don't think I'm able to do justice to it by trying to explain it. So I don't even want to try.
Well,
Out of curiosity, before you bounce, but you recognize I mean, as long as if you can recognize the irrationality of that, as far as being intellectually honest, if you can recognize it, then that's cool.
Oh yes, I fully embrace the irrationality involved in it, and I would go a step further and say that like I recognize that at the heart of Christianity in particular, there is like a paradox, right, in the idea that God is 100% man and 100% human. That's something that does not align with what we know of as logic, right? And I'm comfortable with that. Yes.
So would that, having an intuition and then seeing someone's life be transformed, would that be evidence in any other scientific field as far as you know?
Well, this isn't a scientific field, so I don't know what you mean other scientific field.
Just any scientific field. Would it, like law, history, biology,
it would
physics, chemistry? And why? Why do you think that is?
Because it's a totally different domain. This is not science here.
Well, no. The reason is because those things have been proven false. Like using those as a basis to come to conclusions have gotten it wrong so much. We know we can't trust those as evidence. They have been filtered out in the scientific field. It's not because it's a different field. It's because science tested those things, and we started with those as evidence before science developed, and we realized they didn't work. And so the reason science doesn't accept those is because we know those things are unreliable.
Well, that's fine. I mean, like again, like there's this part of this paradox at the heart of Christianity is this idea that in Christianity, God is relational, right? This is part of what the Trinity is about. It's about this relationship between persons in the Godhead, and also between the Godhead and humans. And that's just not something that I'm really interested in, like a scientific argument about, because I'm not going to break down my relationship with my wife in that manner either, you know.
You can prove your wife exists. That would be the difference.
That's true. It's much easier to prove my wife exists to you if I can just take a picture.
Yeah, but the question is more like science wants to differentiate. Is it real or imaginary? So if you have a relationship with your wife versus a relationship with an imaginary friend, What are the differences between these two things? And with a wife, we can make novel predictions and confirm them, like taking pictures. With imaginary friends, is there any difference between your relationship with a god and your relationship or somebody's relationship with an imaginary friend?
Yeah, I would say the relationships are different. Yes.
Well, he stated that he acknowledges that there's an irrational aspect to this.
What's the
that
difference?
he-
Yeah. What's the difference between my relationship with God and the relationship with my wife?
No,
No, an
like,
imaginary friend.
yeah. So say you have a relationship with God and somebody else has a relationship with an imaginary friend. What is the difference between those two?
Oh, I don't know. I suppose it would depend on the imaginary friend. I don't really, I don't go down hypotheticals that much because I can't get in another person's mind.
Can I ask, you said that you kind of leaned in towards the irrational.
Yeah.
I mean, why?
Well, I just think the universe is weird enough that that makes sense.
he can. He's allowed to do that as long as he's being intellectually honest and he can acknowledge it. I would say that would be the biggest point. Is the minute when you begin saying that your irrational things are completely rational and that you have justification for them. But from my perspective, you acknowledge it's irrational. There is nothing more than a personal justification, whether whatever it fulfills for you, whether it's psychological or of some sort of physiological utility for you. That's fine. That's great. But you acknowledge this, and that's fine. As long as you can be intellectually honest about it. That's the important thing, that we can have an intellectually honest conversation regarding it. You recognize the disparity, and that's okay for you.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think there's actually like a real danger when people try to make their idea of what God is align with what their sense of a logical order is. I think that's where a lot of the dangerous stuff comes in.
I would also, well, and like I said, Taco, or if anyone else, if I'm overstepping time, but I kind of just want to know and press on like the whole Christianity thing, because from one aspect, you almost sound very deist, but you have a personal relationship with Jesus, and I always want to know, do you believe? And tell me if this is a straw man in ritual human sacrifice is a good thing.
Ritual human sacrifice is a good thing.
Yes.
No, I don't think it's a good thing.
Okay. How is what Jesus did any different than ritual human sacrifice?
Well, Jesus is not a human person. Jesus is a divine person.
Okay, so you're right. Let me steel man the phrase.
Person sacrifice, not human sacrifice.
Or how do you think ritual God sacrifice is moral?
Well,
or how about blood magic
moral.
rituals, like blood magic rituals, stuff like that?
I think you know the answer to that. And as far as like whether God's sacrifice is moral, I don't even know how to approach that question.
Well, because I view it as immoral. I would take that position. I view the Jesus sacrifice as immoral. Any God that would kill his son is an immoral God.
I would take it as logically contradictory, is that any entity that claims that it is omnibenevolent or that it is all-loving and is all-powerful has the ability to affect change and operate in a manner that comports with omnibenevolence, and that murder, even no matter how you justify it, killing something when you don't have to kill something is logically contradictory. God has the power to do things a particular way. That comports with its supposed attributes, and it for some reason refuses to do this, which is just ridiculous. Because if you're all loving and you're all powerful and you know everything, then you don't need to kill anyone in order to affect any kind of change. You could just affect that change because you have the power to do so. So without violating free will. But God doesn't apparently do this. So God doesn't operate on these terms. It operates in decidedly human terms, which is weird.
Yeah, well, I mean, offering up like a succinct explanation of the atonement is something I wasn't prepared to do right now. And I don't think that's really what this stage is for either. So I'll just leave it at that, because it is something that there is an explanation for, but it would take a while to break down, and I did not come here with that in mind. I just wanted to drop one thing off and see your guys' answer to that.
Well, thank you. Perhaps we could go through that in a future stage. If you find that things are quiet, feel free to join us again.
Sure. Pleasure. Thank you.
Send
Thank
in
you.
love.
Thank you for coming up. So this next one is kind of interesting. Does anybody have anything they want to say about that one?
No, I think pretty much got
Cool.
to a good place there. He recognizes he's intellectually honest about his position. I can't really complain about that. He recognizes what it is, and as long as he recognizes the reality of it, there's always the opportunity for change or the opportunity for growth. So I got to give him that.
So this next one is Call Me Need. They were telling me that there has to be a god or paranormal or something. They're not quite sure what. They're an atheist, so that's an interesting position. So I figured we'd let them talk. What's going on?
So I'm trying to say here that what do you guys mean by guys convince us that a God exists? I can convince you that there's someone or something at least that has a hand in a lot of things in this world. A lot of things that can never make sense. A lot of things like science and scientists can never explain. Paranormal activities, extremely weird coincidences. We have to believe that there has to be something or someone who controls and has an effect on this world that we can't see or directly feel. It's just like
Gravity.
signs and stuff
Okay.
everywhere. Just there has to be something,
You did ask a question, and so I guess kind of what we're looking for in a deity is something that would be a superhuman being or supernatural being or spirit of some sort that has some kind of power over nature and human fortunes, like a deity.
The latitude of the pyramids of Giza match the same exact speed of light. How can you explain that?
Say that again.
Can you say that
The
again?
latitude of the pyramids of Giza, they match the exact speed of light.
The
What?
You can Google
latitude
that.
of the pyramids of Giza match the speed of light?
Yeah, the exact speed of light. You can Google that.
So the pyramids were built with a system of measurement, as I understand, that pretty
Yeah, the
well
pyramids
matches metric.
themselves are just a miracle.
No, it doesn't. So I just looked it up. The latitude of this pyramids of Giza are the last three digits are wrong. So they're not. It doesn't
It's
match the speed of light.
29.9. I can send the pictures.
No,
I'll send them
I'm
for you
literally
guys.
looking at it right now. So the last three
Yeah,
digits
me
are
too.
wrong.
I'm
So the
looking
speed
at
of
them
light,
too.
speed of light is 299,792,458. The latitude of
That's
Giza.
which is
So
the same as
wait. Latitude of Giza is 299,792,311. So it's missing three digits.
yeah, because they're extra digits.
Yeah, so it's not. It
If
doesn't.
it's a miracle, it should be precise, right?
They're extra
But
digits.
the latitude is just
So
I don't know how to explain that.
the
just-
latitude 299,792.
It can't be more than that. You understand me?
Stop. The latitude 299,792 goes the entire way around the world. So there's literally thousands of miles of things that all match that latitude. Like just Google latitude 299.
I don't
Find other
understand what that
buildings. There are tens of thousands of buildings that all have the exact same latitude.
Yeah, but why the pyramids? Isn't that a coincidence?
Yes, it's a coincidence, just like every other building that's on the exact same latitude.
And you think it just doesn't mean anything?
No, because literally there are tens of thousands of buildings on that latitude. Why is Uncle Bob's house on latitude 299,792? Why did the designers of Uncle Bob's house plan this? Is this a message from God that they
Pyramids
wanted to put
were
it?
built million years ago.
It doesn't
and
matter when it was built.
nobody knows
Uncle
how
Bob from
they were
3,000 years
built.
ago. Why is Uncle Bob's house from 3,000 years ago on the latitude 299,792?
This might help. So call me Need. What god do you think is real? Which of the Egyptian gods is
I
real?
was born in a Muslim environment, and I grew up as a Muslim, but not anymore. Honestly,
Mhm.
a lot of things just don't make sense. For
I'm
Allah is the
curious.
God.
I'm curious to which Egyptian god do you think is real, or all of them real?
I don't think that there is an Egyptian God. I don't think there is a God. I'm not certain about
So
that.
Well,
I
that's a
believe
different
that there
topic.
has to be something.
the thing
That's
is,
what I believe.
though, hold on. The thing is, though, you point forward that the pyramids being there is evidence. If it should be evidence for any god, it should be evidence for one of the Egyptian gods, correct?
No, that doesn't
not the
matter.
god.
No, that have to
doesn't
be because
matter.
there are so many other coincidences.
So I want to go back to the
Yeah,
actual
There are even-
topic. So
But the pyramids
it doesn't matter
were
what
built.
God. It doesn't matter what God.
Yeah,
The pyramids.
it might not be a God, even some kind of power. I don't know. I don't believe that there's a God myself, but I believe that there has to be something or someone. That's what I believe in.
I was
What were you
trying to
saying?
get
That's
something
that
out.
cannot
Do you
always
know?
explain
Do you know
everything.
what? Do you know why they built the pyramids? What the pyramids stand for?
To bury their kings, I believe. I don't know. I'm not sure,
No.
and I don't care honestly.
They are
Oh
a
my God.
pathway to gods. So
There are so
if
many
you
stories
think,
about that. I believe.
I agree, but if you think there are evidence, shouldn't they be evidence for the gods that they are a pathway
No.
to?
No, it doesn't matter.
How
Really
about
relevant.
that?
So
I-
I want to go. I want to go back to the actual argument.
TJump, please let me ask my question. I never interrupt you, so why are you interrupting me?
I answered your question. Your question does not logically
I
follow.
didn't ask you a question to answer.
Oh, it
I'm
doesn't matter.
asking
Oh my God.
the guest. I'm
Peter.
asking. I do not need any correction from you, TJump.
Peter, your question has no logical intent.
TJump, I do not need any correction
You
from
do.
you in
You
my
do.
line of questioning.
You do.
Taco, can you deal with this?
Come on, guys, one at a time. Don't. If Peter's asking him a question, just let him ask a question. Everybody has the right to ask questions. We're all here for quite a few hours.
Well, I was actually in a line
Yeah.
of question, and Peter interrupted. So I was wanting to talk about the latitude
Oh,
longitude
sorry,
thing, which is what he
you were
brought up.
done. I'll mute. No problem.
So the latitude longitude thing. One, none of the specific pyramids have a latitude or longitude on the speed of light. The Giza one has 299,773. The Sphinx has 299,753. The Pyramid of Khufu has 299,759. But if you just go to a map of the world and you type in that latitude, and you can see a big line, it goes all the way around the planet, and you can just zoom in to literally any country you want on that line and find someone's house at any time in history. Does the fact that that person's house being on that latitude indicate anything at all?
Are you saying that every house has a latitude of 299?
Every latitude in that line, so latitude and longitude are lines, they parallel up and down and left and right all the way the world around the planet, right?
Oh, I got it. Well, that was just an example. I didn't do any research or something, but that's just one of the paranormal activities that I've noticed that just led me to think that there has to be something or someone. There are tons of
Wait, why is
miracles
that? Why is
and
that
things that
paranormal?
don't make any sense.
Why
That
is that?
science can never explain.
Why is that paranormal? Again, there is a line, the latitude line 299,792 goes the entire way around the planet. So there are thousands and thousands of houses that have all been on that line. What about that is paranormal or supernatural?
Look, as I said, I didn't know any researchers, so I'm not sure if I can answer that. I'm not sure if you're but I'm sure that there are tons of those things that you can't just explain. If this one is wrong, there are so many others.
I think I can answer that. What it sounds like you're telling us is something really cool happens with something else that's really cool. But you would have to show us why. You would have to be like, the people who built the pyramids of Gaza knew the speed of light, and they put this building here because they were trying to transmit that thousands of years later they were trying to give us this information. Or it could be like TJump said, and they just picked a random address they didn't know. And it's just a really cool thing happening with another really cool thing.
What about like latitude line 3.1415? Is that did they all know pi? Did everyone who built a house on latitude line 3.1415 just know pi? What about E or I? You can just pick any number.
Not to point out, call me, that the pyramids were built long before the latitude longitudinal system was created. So before we understood that, so the Egyptians had no awareness of this, and the fact that the numbers don't line up precisely, and it's only on one, that's also problematic.
That's a really good point. Like the latitude longitude lines are totally made up by people. They aren't like correct. They're just numbers we made up. And so did the Egyptians know that we were going to make up this completely arbitrary system of latitude and longitude lines, and that in this made up system it was going to correspond to the light?
Man, I just believe that science can't prove everything always. That's what I believe in, and I'm trying to convince you as well by some examples that science can never ever explain maybe half of those coincidences. This is just one of thousands.
No, it's a good. Okay, so call me. You acknowledge that coincidences happen all the time, correct?
Right.
Okay, so coincidences are not miracles. And two, you're familiar with pareidolia and apophenia, correct?
I'm not sure what that means.
Pareidolia and apophenia are problems with essentially problems with our perception and reasoning, in which we derive values from patterns that we see in nature, in like randomness.
Yeah,
the best example I can give you is if you look at looking at the texture paint on your walls in your house, and you can see like faces or objects or things in there. It's because the brain typically tries to make sense of random patterns, of like just random information. It tries to find patterns within that it can better understand it. So this is a well understood phenomena. All right. So when you're looking at coincidences happen all the time, it's a reason why some rock formations found underneath the ocean from a particular angle look like they were laid bricks, but when you look at them from another angle, they don't. So it looks like, oh, there was a road down here. Look at it from a particular angle. But if you literally shift over to the right, it doesn't look like brick anymore. So it's just a rock formation. Or why people see giants in rocks, so they think that like mountains are like, you petrified giants and stuff. It's the same kind of thing. It's just you're trying to derive information from a coincidence, from a lineup of numbers, but coincidences happen all the time. So my question would then be, just because there are coincidences, does it logically follow that gods exist or a god exists?
Some coincidences really just, I don't know how to explain the power of the feeling that I had sometimes that just led me to 100% believe that there has to be something or someone. And I'm sure that each one of you guys has went through something that made him believe that, oh, wow, what is that? It doesn't make any sense, and that there has to be something or someone. And the thing is, it might be explainable, or like, okay, you found some scientific explanation for this or that, but a lot of really big, weird things that science can never 100% explain them. And that just leads us that there is some kind of power, there's some kind of God, I don't know.
Well, call me. Why wouldn't I just say no? If I could come up with a scientific explanation for a coincidence and I can understand it completely, then that's fine. But just because there are things out there that I can't, just because there are things out there or coincidences out there that I can't like immediately explain, or they haven't been studied enough, or they haven't occurred enough for us to be able to explain them, then why would I ever assume that that's a god? Why wouldn't we simply say we don't know?
I believe that there are a lot of coincidences that you can never come with an explanation for. You can Google that. There are tons of them.
That's fine, but that doesn't answer my question. That it's fine that we may never come up with an explanation.
Yeah, and those coincidences just lead us to believe that there has to be something.
No, it doesn't. No, it doesn't. It just says all you can derive from that is that we just don't know.
Well,
You
can I
adding
ask you?
in you adding in an answer where we don't have an answer doesn't follow.
Homie, can you give us your best coincidence? Like the one that is just like the knockout.
I'm not sure if I can. Um, I'm not sure really. You can guys Google that. There are tons of them.
Well, I think it comes down to
Like
it. The
if you
Coincidences are
just
not a
type,
reason to
if you just
coincidences,
type,
even ones we cannot explain, are not a reason to believe in a God. Because it does not follow that gods exist because coincidences occur.
Or the paranormal. Because I
Or
believe
even the paranormal, yeah. And at most, it might get you. At most, you could propose deism because it's unfalsifiable. But when you're choosing specific gods, then you get into more problematic territory. So it doesn't even get you to that point. So I think it's just an emotional appeal. I think you yourself said so that it was an emotional appeal. That you have this intuition, you have this feeling, and that this is the best answer for you to stick this answer in this slot. It's like, oh, we don't know. We may never know. Therefore, God. Yeah, that doesn't follow, dude. I'm sorry.
yeah, that's okay. I understand, guys. Thank you for having me.
sending you
coming out.
love.
What?
Thank you for coming on.
Thanks, bud.
Everyone said thank you at the same time.
Sorry.
Oh,
It was
shit.
paranormal coincidence.
Amy's apologizing like a Canadian here.
All right, so
Oh, I'm sorry, eh?
so Holy Relic was wanting to talk about God's properties, which I really am looking forward to hearing about.
Hey, Holy Relic, you there?
Hello.
Hi.
Oh, so you want?
Hello.
So can I start now?
So
Yeah.
I guess which God and what are the properties?
Okay, I guess I would just ascribe to like the Christian God, and the properties that I'm referring to are, I guess the moral properties that he also, because he's perfectly moral as well. Because a lot of times when you bring up things that should be logically possible, like he should be able to like atone for our sins without like a human sacrifice. It seems like that would be that didn't make much sense to much people, but I think that the only thing I'm going to say, and I'll leave it at this, is that there is a moral property and I guess a moral world to the way things are done, so that God can't do everything, and I think that he does have limitations by definition, and because he has to abide by a moral framework. For instance, like he couldn't do an immoral thing, for instance. So if it would be immoral for him to, I guess, forgive sins within a way that wasn't sacrificing his son, then he couldn't do that.
Well, are you stating implicitly that God is morally perfect?
Yes.
Then how
So
can
that-
okay? So, but there's a logical contradiction there because if a morally perfect being would not be able to create beings that are morally imperfect or beings that are capable of being corrupted,
Why do you think that?
because that's the attribute of perfection. Is that perfection cannot create imperfection? That if you were if something that is perfect creates something that is imperfect or something that can't. When something is corruptible, it is not perfect. That means there's a flaw in it. If things are designed, and if you can corrupt the system, then the system is not perfect.
Okay.
So
That's
if God
a pretty
created
good
human
point.
beings and human beings are corruptible, if you were by your worldview, and God is morally perfect, this is a logical contradiction because a morally perfect being cannot create things that are morally imperfect or capable of becoming morally imperfect.
I actually understand where you're coming from. That's a really good point, but I just don't see personally how that follows, because I think that in order to be morally perfect, you have to be a god, and I think that the fact I guess I would have to just go to the common like free will type thing, right? I don't think that creating free I think the alternative would be like us being like the wind, not having any choice, not like anything. I think this is also a little bit beyond our understanding. So like in order to be able to conceptualize like what like a human that would be like that would have free will but also be perfect at the same time, it just doesn't seem like it fits for me. I
Do
don't
you
know.
mind if I ask you just a few questions on that perfect
Okay.
concept?
Yep. Of course.
So you said God can't do immoral things. Can I ask, has that always been, or is that like post Old Testament?
I guess it would be since I guess yeah, it would be all the time. It would be an ever present. Like he's outside of time actually, but yeah, it'd be like at every given moment,
Cool.
I guess.
So let's just take that down then and go to
Yep.
Noah. All right.
Okay.
God decides
Sorry.
to drown. No, I mean everybody, basically everybody, right? There's a single family, but if this was a horror film, it would be everybody.
So
Isn't
how do
that
I justify
immoral?
that? Well, I guess I would have to know all the surrounding circumstances. Like, it's supposed to be described in the Bible. Well, there's like two implicit assumptions here. Like one of them would be that God killing anyone would be a bad thing necessarily, which I don't
Yeah.
agree with. Um, another thing would be the circumstances in which he chose to like make that decision would be like unjustified. For instance, like I think that you can play the game both ways. Like if someone, because like the idea was at the time like a lot of the people were very immoral and they were like um going away from God's I guess covenant. But
What about the babies? There are a bunch of
wait,
babies.
can I finish this point? Can I finish this point and then we can go on to the babies?
Sure.
So I think that if so let's say someone was violating God's covenant or whatever, and they were killing people, they were killing hundreds of thousands of people, right? And then I feel like you have like this type of inner something inside of you that says like he shouldn't be allowing this guy to be continuing living just committing this much evil. God should have been able to stop this person killing hundreds of thousands. So I feel like you can play the game both ways. Like if the society at this point was evil to the extent where like it was pretty much beyond repair and he wanted to cleanse the earth in that way so that there would be possibility of virtuousness and I guess his will being fulfilled in the long term, then he would do that as a morally perfect and all-knowing agent. I don't know if that answers your question sufficiently.
So I have another question or two, but it's leading where TJump is, so I think I'm going to hand it off to him.
So was it moral for God to drown the babies? Were the babies killing anybody? Did the babies do anything immoral there?
Okay. So that's a really good question. I like that question too because that also goes into like another point where they talk about like how what was it, the Passover where God killed the firstborns of the like the Egyptians, right? Um, and like as a punishment for like the Egyptians not letting his people go.
Yeah, and he
And
sent the bears to kill the
yeah,
40 kids, and he killed
yeah,
Jacob's
exactly.
daughter. He's killed lots of children.
That's those are all really good questions, and I can't pretend that I can corroborate every single one of them, or even sufficiently one of them. But I guess the way I would view something like that is that I guess that just because I don't necessarily understand the mechanism on why that would be like morally permissible, I would just have to plead that this would be I think what you're getting at, this would be like an undercutting argument for God. Like I don't think this is a defeater for him because you could always plead the fact that it sounds like a cop out, but you can always plead the fact that there's some like unknown circumstance or unknown something in the moral realm that we can't see that would justify such a thing since we have imperfect knowledge. But like I think the whole point, I think this is just like not getting to the heart of the issue because all of these arguments you're speaking of are kind of like undercutting defeaters and not just like complete
Well, the
knockout
big
argument.
the big defeater on this is that you've stated that God is morally perfect. God has always been morally perfect and always will be. The problem is that you also gave other attributes there. You said God is all powerful, that essentially God can perform any action that is logically contradictory, and that God is all knowing, that God possesses all true propositions. So the issue there is that the question then becomes, could God have performed any of these actions in a different way to affect the exact same change without resulting in mass death and destruction?
I think any answer we could produce is based on imperfect knowledge. Therefore, it's
No,
not.
the answer is yes, because it's omnipotent, so it can do it. If
No,
there
but
is, if I can look at a situation, say that there's a bunch of evil people all over the place, right? And I need to come up with a solution for this. So one of the solutions in my omnipotent repertoire is drown the planet and everything on it. So that's one option I have in the infinite span of options that I have because I am all powerful. So if I am also morally perfect, then I can come up with, I as a human being can come up with a more morally justifiable response to sinful people everywhere than drowning the planet. So if I can come up with it and I'm just a human being, then you can guarantee that God can come up with it. And God already did. In his omniscience, God already knew the more morally perfect action. So that is a violation. If there is a more moral option and God did not use that, then God is not morally perfect.
Okay, I can understand why you would think that. But I would just have to say that what solution, if you, let's say, for instance, like this is just an example. Let's say that 98% of the world was very hedonistic and very evil, and they were all killing each other constantly, raping whatever else, whatever. What would be your solution to something like that? Let's just say.
Can I answer that? Can I answer?
Yeah, go for it, Amy. Go for it. I had one ready to go, but go for it.
Oh, I want Holy Relic to play a game, which is trademark Pine Creek. But Holy Relic, would you like to play Poof or Drown? It's a fantastic game. So, God comes to you and he says, Holy Relic, I know that I've drowned the entire planet, but that was just season 1. I'm coming and I really need to do it again. We are going to eliminate everyone, except for you and your family, of course. But I need to know, how are we going to get rid of everyone? Are we going to just poof them out of existence, making sure, nothing bad goes on, but they're gone? Or do you want to go the classic model? Would you like everyone to drown?
Okay. I think that there's an implicit assumption there that the people that drown don't deserve it. I mean, I think that you have to know the surrounding circumstances. I think this is where omnipotence comes in. I think that you'd have to know the surrounding circumstances on what these people were doing. For instance, like if I saw like a child rapist or whatever, I think that person deserves to drown. I think that they're terrible people and they deserve punishment. I mean, if everyone was like that at the time, I could understand that type of judgment being cast.
Well, that's what's problematic, is that if you're the God, right, and you're all loving and you're morally perfect, then even though that person may have done something totally atrocious, like he was, like he preyed upon children, just blinking them out of existence, Thanos style, would be more morally perfect, would be the more moral option than the agony of drowning to death. Because ultimately the end goal is the same. They're removed from the system. So, but the thing is morally perfect. So it would understand that it's not going to, it's going to die. I'm not trying to teach it anything. I'm trying to teach the survivor something. So the circumstances of their death doesn't matter, because they're not going to learn anything from it because they're dead. So I'm a morally perfect agent, so I'll just blink them out of existence. Poof, they're gone. I snap my fingers and end their history. And now all that's left is Noah. That's the more morally perfect option. And in response to what you said, what would be mine? Mine would be, if I was this entity, I would reveal myself to everyone on the planet simultaneously, because I have the power to do that. I would not remove their free will and say, you have this option, I exist. You can choose to follow me or you can choose to not, because I'm giving you the option to do so. And it's going to be it's going to be a legitimate option, because there's no punishment if you choose not to. I'm giving you the option to do so, but you don't have to. So it's a legitimate choice. I'm not putting a metaphysical gun to your head saying that there's a hell or damnation or punishment. You just won't follow me, which is great. Okay, but it's totally your choice. And that's it. I would give them the option. I wouldn't try to bait them. I wouldn't try to manipulate them with like, oh, there's a heaven. I wouldn't try to sell them. I just give them the choice. I'm here. I created everything. Here's the knowledge you need. I don't require faith to exist because I'm freaking God, but I'm going to give you a choice to follow me or not. It's totally up to you. Okay. No punishment if you don't. Nothing grand if you do.
Okay, my closing statement on this would be that I just think that any judgment we made would be based on imperfect knowledge, and I guess that what my point is trying to get at is that any determination on poofing or whatever would be based upon information that is not complete. Therefore, you might be wrong about the type of determination that, like, on your type of moral ruling.
No, it doesn't matter if it's not complete. What matters is, can I come up with something better?
Well, that's
the point.
How could you come with something better if you don't have complete information on the topic?
Because I don't need complete information on this particular thing in order to come up with a better response. Because we look at what the claim was. The claim was there was sin everywhere, and the response of God was to drown everyone and to kill everything in agony. It's not. I can come up with a better response to sin being everywhere, and I just did.
Well, I also
think that you're underplaying like what's the like. It's not just sin, right? Like, it's hedonism, it's disgusting.
Oh my God, babies don't have any of that. You can't say that.
Yes, that is really if I was trying to build towards something, what I wanted to say, and you even brought up free will, is that means the possibility, at least, that there is some evil baby that deserves to be drowned. That's really what I'm trying to get to.
I guess on the baby question again, I mean, I just don't. I don't think necessarily that God killing a baby would be a moral wrong, but
Why
I guess
not?
I'll
I mean, you said it, not us.
I do have a point. I just want to leave you with to think about.
Yeah.
Well, actually, I
You're
had a-
saying
I
that.
had
I enjoyed this conversation though. Thank you for
Yeah,
I had another
Ditto.
question before he leaves.
yeah. I just wanted to say, like, you've indicated at the beginning that this would be generally the Christian God, and so the way I see it is, if this God is perfectly moral, that imposes a limitation on that God's omnipotence. They're not all powerful then, because there are certain things that they can't do as a consequence of that characteristic. Do you have a way of rationalizing this?
Sorry, can you repeat that really quickly?
Okay, so if your God is morally perfect and cannot do anything immoral, I'm going by what you specified at the beginning, and it's a Christian God. The Christian God has characteristics of omnipotence amongst other omni traits. To me, that seems like that will limit his omnipotence, because if he can't do anything immoral, then he's not all powerful. There are certain limitations to his power. How do you resolve that?
I guess I mean I kind of like admitted this at the beginning. I don't think that I don't think that he can do anything. I think that he can do anything that is morally good. I guess. I mean, I don't know how else.
Oh,
Well,
okay, I missed that
by
part.
your
I'm sorry.
definition, he could only do what was morally good because he's morally perfect.
Yeah.
He can't do anything that is immoral.
Yes, correct. He can't.
Right.
So I had a question about that specifically. So let's say I have this guy I know. Let's call him Adolf. Let's say Adolf can never do anything that isn't morally perfect, but he just gassed a whole bunch of Jewish babies. Now, does that prove that he's not perfectly moral, that he just gassed a bunch of Jewish babies?
I really feel like this is just like this is so irrelevant. I mean, I
It's
don't think it's at all an apt comparison. I don't know.
well, that's great, but I do. So let's go through it with me. So I say Adolf is perfectly moral and he can never do an immoral thing, but Adolf gassed millions of babies. Is it rational to say he is moral, or is it
To me, it sounds like
rational?
you're saying, can God make a square circle? It seems like a logical contradiction. I think
I
any
didn't.
like
No,
I
no,
don't.
this is not about God. This is about Adolf. So I say there is a guy named Adolf. He is perfectly moral, and he gassed millions of babies.
I would
Which
have
is
to
more
say that your
rational?
determination that he's perfectly moral is incorrect.
That's great. Why would that be the more rational conclusion?
Because there is already an inherent like morality that's been instilled in all of us that contradicts your idea of morality that is in Adolf.
Right. So the fact that he killed millions of babies means he's immoral, right?
Yes.
Okay, I'm done.
And there really isn't an inherent morality built into every human being. It's not a universal. Is that
I think there's some
morals are
constants that are. I think there are some universal constants, but there are some things deriving from said constants that aren't universal.
Well, I mean, there's like psychopaths who have none. That's I think
and
more what he was getting
that
at.
that would support the fact that it's completely and totally subjective, because morality is subjective to the individual,
I
it's
don't think the
subjective to the
exception
group,
affects the rule.
it's subjective to the village, subjective to the nation, subjective to the planet.
I don't think the exception creates the rule. I mean, I don't know.
Well,
But
if
you
it's
can't say. Go ahead, TJ, I'm
universal
sorry.
and exception are mutually exclusive.
Okay. I understand what you're saying. Yeah, that makes sense. Yeah, I don't know how to respond to that.
So ultimately, the attributes that you give to this god result in logical contradictions.
Okay. That makes sense.
Okay.
Thanks for coming
Since
on.
logical
Next
contradictions
speaker.
cannot exist, the god does not exist.
Yeah, I mean, I wouldn't be so like quick to make that determination based on like I can understand why you would make it, and I don't blame you for it, but I just think that there's there's other factors personally for me that I wouldn't go to that conclusion.
Would that not be an emotional appeal?
It would be an emotional appeal, slightly, but it'd also be like an appeal based on like my limited knowledge and understanding that any like judgment I make is incomplete at the end of the day, even if something seems to be the case.
But well, think about the statement you just made. I don't know everything, therefore God.
No, I didn't. I think that it's most probable for God to exist. I guess I didn't go over this, but I don't assert that it's. I don't assert that this means that God exists. I think that is just the most rational thing that makes most sense given the information I'm presented with.
Okay, so the most rational explanation in the evidence you presented is a logical contradiction. That doesn't make sense.
No, I think that you see it as a logical contradiction, but I see it as a lack of my
No,
knowledge when it comes
no,
to
it is a logical contradiction. These are logical. This is A does not equal A, or A does not equal not A. It's the identity of this thing is this, and you're saying that not A, that the and the antithesis to its identity is still a logical possibility. It doesn't work that way.
You're simplifying it down to A and not A, which would make sense in that case. But when it
Well,
comes down to killing people and the surrounding circumstances we're in, I think that I guess the last thing I'll say before I leave here, like for instance, if they were all, I guess, like I don't know, they were all child rapists. Okay, I don't think that God drowning all of them would be a bad thing. I don't think that would be
Okay,
bad.
well, I mean, then you have to reconcile one very, very simple thing.
Yeah.
If God's end goal is for everyone to believe in it and accept it and have a relationship with it,
Yeah.
and God in its omniscience would know that this would be a stumbling block in the future before it created anything, because it has infallible knowledge of all true propositions. It is a true proposition that what you have presented is a logical contradiction, is a stumbling block for anyone accepting God and having a relationship with this apparent moral monster. God would know this and still yet chose to act in the fashion it did when it could have acted in a different fashion to elicit a different response. Why did your God act in a logically contradictory fashion?
I think that he acted in a seemingly logically contradictory fashion because
No. If God's end goal is for all of us to accept it and have a relationship with it, and it would know
I
that
think there's other
particular actions.
mechanisms. I think there's other mechanisms.
No.
which you
Holy
could go
relic. If God in its omniscience wants to have a relationship with everyone and wants everyone to accept it and believe in it, but God would also know infallibly that in the future, its actions would be seen as immoral, which would create a logical contradiction, which would justify people not accepting it, not believing in it. Why does God's actions directly contradict its end goal?
I
What
don't
it
think.
wants.
Another thing is I don't think that not knowing one thing about it. I don't have an answer for that. You're right. I don't have an answer for that. But just like you don't have an answer for the beginning of the universe, I don't have an answer.
Sure,
for
I do.
this. So how did the
You
universe?
didn't ask that. This hasn't been the conversation about cosmology.
No. So what I'm saying is that yeah, there is limit to like my knowledge. Like if you're asking me that specific question, I don't know the answer to that. But I think there's also a limit to your knowledge and your worldview.
Yes. As as a result of Gödel's incompleteness theorem or the halting problem, there's information out there that we will never possess and that we can never have. Sure, I acknowledge this. It doesn't mean that it doesn't follow that a God exists. Which is why I said earlier, I summed up your entire position. I don't know everything, therefore God.
That's not why I believe in God. I'm just talking about a specific like sub argument on his properties, right? That's not my like my logic behind why I believe in God. This is just a discussion about something I thought maybe I'd have some knowledge on.
What? Why do you believe in God then? Because we're trying to be convinced here, right?
Yeah, I'm sorry about that. But I wanted just to talk about that specifically because a topic that was brought up. Because you want an argument specifically for God, I'm sorry I brought that up if that wasn't relevant to this discussion.
It's like something presented that doesn't require fallacies to.
No, I just wanted to discuss. I wanted to discuss this part of theology. I didn't necessarily want to convince you, so I guess that's my fault.
Well, and that's fine to at least try and convince us of an argument, but I still would love to know, is there something, what convinces you to wake up every day and think that Jesus is your Lord and Savior?
I think it's very, very much an intuition.
Emotional appeal.
Yeah, I don't think all emotional appeals are built equal, but yeah, I'd say so.
No, they're not all built equal, but they are all fallacious.
Okay, I got you. Another thing, just one thing I'll bring up really quickly. Do you think that all of the historical evidence for his resurrection is bollocks? I'm sure you do, right?
So
there is no historical evidence for the resurrection.
Okay, so can you walk me through some of that?
Some of the nothing.
Yeah, some of the nothing. Like so, like some of the claims, like for instance, the empty tomb. Do you know about that?
Do you have a historian that makes any claims about Jesus' resurrection? Because I'd love to hear
Yeah,
a
the only story,
historian that says something about that.
the
That'd be
only
interesting.
the only story about it is in the Bible, and you can't use the source of the claim to prove the claim.
Well, so more specifically,
It's also
history
like
and
other.
law don't accept testimony for things that have no empirical basis. So miracles, magic, mythical creatures, paranormal, supernatural, UFOs, none of those are supportable by historical testimony. There's no historical document that we accept any of those things in any of them. So like Pliny the Younger, Pliny the Elder, they wrote about the origin of Rome and how Rome was founded by Romulus and Remus and they were raised by a wolf. No historian accepts that. It's in a historical document from an actual historian of the time period, but we don't accept it as true. So history as a field is not allowed to accept any miracles, magic, mythical creatures, paranormal, supernatural, UFOs based on testimony. You'd need some kind of actual empirical evidence that those things are actually possible before historical testimony counts as evidence for any of those things.
Okay. What amount of martyrs would like let's say if
Zero.
there's so there could be an infinite amount of people and infinite coincidence that you would still chalk up to naturalism or a mass psychosis.
You know,
Yes.
martyr count.
Yeah,
That
yeah.
seems
The
that seems
number
that seems like
number
a
of
bit
martyrs is
irrational,
irrelevant. Well, it would be irrational to say that something is true because a bunch of people are willing to die for it. The fact that people are willing to die for it doesn't increase the probability it's true, no matter how many people are willing to die for it. Like literally, if there were tens of millions of people willing to die for flat Earth, would that make flat Earth more likely? No, no, it would not.
But that's not the only thing, right? That's like one of the big things, right? But
No, it's just an argument for popularity.
Well, can I also ask about this empty
Yeah.
tomb thing? Because the empty tomb has always been strange to me. Because an empty tomb
that's why I want you
can
to walk me through
mean
it.
a lot of things. Like, walk us through why an empty tomb meant that Jesus came back from the dead and then ascended to heaven. Because I can think of a dozen naturalistic reasons why a body would actually no longer be in the tomb and they would be mountains of statistically higher than someone raising a resurrection. And it also, the resurrection itself is weird to me. Not saying that you can't resurrect and then go to heaven. It's just odd that the first thing you do after being resurrected is leave and have no evidence, and that the evidence of you coming back is that there's no evidence.
It would have been really cool if he'd come back and then just like showed up on Pontius Pilate's doorstep and been like, "Yo, what's up, bro?"
Yeah,
I actually have my own explanations for this type of thing, but it might sound retarded to you guys. I don't know, but I could try explaining that. But another thing I have to like, I guess the assumption would be that the empty tomb, like you put the body there and there was Roman guards presumably like keeping watch 24/7 and the body disappeared. I mean, I don't know what else to say about that one.
There's actually multiple accounts throughout the Gospels. Each Gospel is a different account of what happened at the tomb and who was there, who discovered it, what was going on. The whole point is what Amy is bringing up is that an empty tomb, this says nothing about divinity. It just says that the tomb was empty. It says that the most logical response that somebody removed the body is all it is,
or burned it, or did something,
or burned it, or buried it somewhere else, or stole it so that the Romans couldn't get to it. Nobody could try to. Maybe they were just trying to steal the body away so that nobody could try and lay claim on it or steal things from it, or what for whatever reason. There's a number of reasons why a body would disappear because humans have been stealing corpses for a long, long time. To try and keep them out of other people's hands, try to give them appropriate burial rites, whatever. It says it does not logically follow. Divinity does not logically follow from an empty tomb. Not to mention, there is no historical account of the resurrection outside of the Bible. There's multiple variations about who was there, what they saw, when it happened, what happened afterwards, who those people talked to. So there's nothing there's nothing substantive to give this story any credence whatsoever.
So the idea of the martyrs is that if you could prove that they had no because martyrs in and of themselves wouldn't be. I'm gonna go back to the point you're saying, but martyrs in and of themselves, because I saw someone comment this. wouldn't be proof of anything, right? But I think that
People willing to die for something
exactly,
is
yeah, it
not
wouldn't,
proof. Is
yeah.
not proof of the existence of what they're dying for.
But if they had no vested interest and they had nothing to gain from it, I think that's pretty decently good evidence.
No, but they convinced themselves that they did.
No, but
if they were, I actually did a live stream on this where we broke down every single one of the martyrs, listened to the book, and explain how.
Can you send that to me? That'd be really interesting because I'm not someone who just like is closed-minded about these types of things. I loved learning about it. And
Wait, why?
Can-
Why do you think that whether or not they genuinely believed matters to the truth of the statement? Like what?
Indeed.
It's not about whether they. I mean, like, if he could come up with an explanation for them martyring over this that wasn't them thinking this was true, that would decrease
Grant
the
they
inherent
think it's
probability.
true, so they think it's true. So what?
Yeah.
Why does
David
the fact
Koresh
that
thought
they
that he
think
was-
it's true make
David Koresh
increase the
thought he was
probability?
the lamb, and David Koresh thought he was the lamb and thought he was going to bring about the new age, and he died in his compound for what he believed. Does
I
that
guess-
make what he believed true?
No, I guess I would just explain it from like let's say if you had a friend that died and you have 10 friends that you know very well are like attesting that he didn't kill himself even though seemingly he did kill himself, and they're all willing to die for that, and they don't seem to have any vested interest on why they would be lying about this. They don't seem to have any motivation. I think this is how you do in the court of law as well. I just feel like that increases the inherent probability.
No,
Well,
they would
wait-
have a vested interest
One
because
sec.
they're a friend.
Well, that doesn't matter. So in a court of law, again, testimony isn't evidence for miracles, magic, mythical creatures, paranormal, supernatural, UFOs. So like for suicide cases, murder cases, testimony does count because those all have an empirical basis. But for miracles, it doesn't. It doesn't matter how many people believe what. It doesn't matter if there's 10,000 people who saw Santi Sai Baba do a miracle in person. That's zero evidence of miracles. Or thousands of people seeing UFOs, or a miracle in where it was in South America. None of those are considered evidence because there's no actual empirical basis that the miracle could happen in the first place. So
Okay.
the suicide case is different than, let's say you have 1,000 people who all believe that there's a comet and they're going to go to heaven and they all kill themselves because they want to be on this comet. Does that increase the probability that the comet is going to bring them to heaven?
I concede that I don't have enough surrounding historical information to overgo because I understand. I think there's a Hume argument on this that like any naturalistic explanation will be pretty much inherently more likely because of all the evidence that we have of other natural things that have occurred in the past. I understand that override pretty much any other like probability for you.
Well, I'm
But,
going further than that. I'm saying, say there's a bunch, like 1,000 people who think that there's a comet coming, and if they kill themselves when the comet comes, it's going to take them to heaven, and 1,000 people kill themselves by drinking magical Kool-Aid. Does that increase the probability of the truth of their claim?
I would have to say no. That doesn't increase the probability. But in the case of the comet, I mean, I think there would be other. I think the idea is like behind his resurrection isn't that there's just martyrs. There's also like other I guess people at the time that were quite influential that have also attested through different evidences as well that they're like of the surrounding information, like some of like the. I think there's like minimal facts arguments.
Okay,
as
so
well,
let's say that
like Jesus Christ existed, for instance. Jesus Christ died on this cross, and then he was buried in this thing, and then there's these guard whatever, you know.
Well, that's great. So let's say that there's an asteroid coming and thousands of people kill themselves, and there's a bunch of historians who mention all of this and mention their beliefs. Does any of that increase the probability that their belief is true? So we know the asteroid came. We can just check it in the charts. We know that 1,000 people killed themselves. We have historians who mention all of these facts. Does any of that increase the probability that the beliefs of the people who killed themselves were true?
I guess the only way God would reveal himself would be through something supernatural. And I guess with enough surrounding evidence, I guess you're just not convinced that it was supernatural, because if God were, for instance,
How do you know supernatural exists?
I don't.
And I could show you or
So you're
why.
agnostic?
So I would view it kind of as like a knowledge versus certainty thing. I think that I don't think I'm certain of this, but I think that there's reason for me to believe that it's
Well, that's
true.
that. I'm asking about the reason thing. Like, I don't care about the certainty. Let's just grant it was supernatural. We just don't know it yet. My question is does the fact that the people believed it and died for it count as any evidence at all? And it seems like no. Like in the case of the asteroid, it doesn't matter how many people believe it. It doesn't matter how many people killed themselves. Those are literally irrelevant.
Because you said that it
Well,
increases.
just those with this example, no, it wouldn't increase the. I feel like they're not the same, but maybe I'm wrong.
So would this not evidence thing somehow become evidence with other facts?
It might be if there's other surrounding facts
What was?
as well as
Oh my god.
this.
So
I think
so
that
if there's
like
other
other things,
evidence, there's other things that
other
count as
evidence on
evidence.
top of martyrs.
Okay, so
But
so
the
let's
martyrs
go
have
back.
been
Go back.
discredited.
Go back. So martyrs, the martyrs of the asteroid count as zero evidence. They are zero reason to believe this is true. But you're saying if we add in other things, that zero somehow becomes more than zero?
It's a cumulative case, I think.
Okay, so the zero becomes it's a zero. So if you add zero, it doesn't matter how many times you add zero, it's still zero. So my question
No,
is
I don't think so, because I think that like, for instance, that if you already have something like, let's say you have something extremely unlikely, like a 1 in 1 billion chance of this being a natural event, right, or something like that. Like it's a low chance, but then something crazy, some crazy piece of evidence brings you up to 50% evidence. I think that can be like since the zero would be still. I don't think it's zero. I think that it's like a very small amount. That's what I'm trying to say. Very, very like minuscule amount.
And that I wanted to ask.
Very
You
minuscule. I
said
don't
that
think
it
it's zero.
increases with every martyr. I wanted to know
I think it's a
how
very small
much
amount.
does it increase with every martyr, and if I'm trying to buy martyrs, how many would it take to get to 100%?
That's like a really hyper intellectual. Like I don't know. Like I can't give you a number.
But well, can I ask, how convinced are you that Jesus Christ is your Lord and Savior?
I would put it above 50%.
Ooh, interesting. About 50. That is fairly agnostic.
how many martyrs does it take to get to 1%?
Like that. That's like a hyper. I feel like there's other surrounding factors too. Like that just accounts for a very small percent. I don't know. Like I can't give you an answer to that.
And I'll give you an extreme case. It's one that atheists normally talk about, but why we don't think that killing yourself can get you anywhere is we've seen it happen to two towers, and it turns out that when you believe something is true, it does, and you martyr yourself, it doesn't seem to.
Another thing that I would say is that another thing that I think is lost in this conversation is a lot of times the implication that a lot of people are willing to kill themselves, we have this idea in our mind that they're affiliated with each other, and that's why the probability wouldn't be raised. If there's a 500 people that walk up to you and say that this flying saucer is coming, and then the flying saucer ends up coming, I think that you would respond to it a lot better if you could determine that these 500 people weren't connected whatsoever, and they're in different parts of the world, and you can determine that they had no connection because they had no technology at the time, and they all said at the exact same time at different parts of the world. I think that would really raise the entire probability.
Okay, I got one of those. So
Right.
we
I
used
think that's what you're losing on this.
that's a good example. Let's go with that one. So all over the world, there were people who would sacrifice other humans in their tribe for certain events, like if the sun got darkened from an eclipse or volcanic events, they would sacrifice people, and tens of thousands of people in their culture, the Mayan culture and different Chinese cultures and different cultures from around the world, all completely separate, not in any way connected, all thought that this super amazing event would be connected to some supernatural thing, would be alleviated if they sacrificed virgins or someone else in their culture. Does that increase the probability that their beliefs were true?
I would say that I think you're assuming that these people, yeah, there's a lot of people at one time doing it, but like what if it was a coincidentally all at the same time, rising at the exact same time? Like let's say tomorrow, let's say technology didn't exist and we had some way of knowing that tomorrow at like the 11th at 7 p.m. everyone at the exact same time said this exact same thing from different places. I think that would count as evidence. I don't think your example is amped
Like if
to
there's a
what I'm
solar
trying to get at.
eclipse and people all around the world, or at least half of the world, see the solar eclipse and think they need to sacrifice a virgin to make the gods less angry, is that evidence that the gods are angry?
No, not in that example. I don't know. I feel like you're just I don't. That wouldn't be proof. I think that we both don't know the historical context here. And I think we're just going to talk past each other the whole time.
I'm pretty familiar with
Because-
the historical context on all of these subjects.
Well, then why don't you just apply it to like? I don't know why you have to use examples then. Why don't you just apply it to like what we're talking about?
I literally am. So I'm saying, if what you're saying is true, here's a historical example where what you're saying is clearly not true. And so it's clearly not true in the case where you're trying to apply it. So the fact that lots of different people sacrificed virgins to appease the gods that are completely unrelated and don't know each other isn't evidence that the gods are angry and that sacrificing
time?
virgins.
Were they at the exact same time?
Yes, this has happened all throughout history. This is a common thing. And so also in your case, no one other than Christians ever claimed Jesus rose from the dead. There's no historical accounts of anyone saying that other than Christians.
I feel like that's obvious though, because if they did believe that, then they would be Christians, right?
Right, but there's no one claiming it happened other than Christians. So like there are people who could say, "Oh, well, we thought Jesus rose from the dead or something, but we still don't believe in him." Like they wouldn't necessarily believe because he
Why
rose
would
from the dead.
why would they not believe in him if they saw him raised from the dead? Am I missing something? I don't know.
It's pretty obvious. Like there are people who used to believe in magic and miracles and stuff all the time. They didn't believe in every person who did a miracle. Like miracles and magic were pretty common back in the day. They thought it was, at least. So just seeing someone do magic wouldn't make them believe that they're the demigod.
I would need to verify that claim through research.
Okay. You just Google the time period. There's tons of miracle workers.
Sounds like you got a bunch of work you still need to do. Holy Relic.
I do have a lot of work to do, and that's why I wanted to talk to you guys. I was hoping you can help me out.
Yeah.
Send me some links to stuff.
Yeah, and you feel free to jump over. You can check out my channel. I did a big long talk with King Xerxes, where we broke down the martyrs and the actual historical accounts of some of these individuals that can be corroborated as best as they can, and how some of them were not martyrs at all. Some of them died as a result of their own actions, and they did not die in the name of their faith. And that Christianity, pretty much the faith pretty much took their deaths as that they died for the for the faith in itself, when in actuality they did not. So there's a number of them. We go through a bunch of them because King Xerxes, who's on this stage every now and then, is probably one of the best experts on biblical historicity that I've come across. So
King Xerxes, who's that?
Mm-hmm. It's another member that comes up on the stage every once in a while. But I did a live stream with him where we went through.
He's
the
no longer
martyrs.
part of JL.
Hey,
He's no longer part of the battle.
Peter,
he's not
no,
gonna be back.
JL. If you could post a link to that video in the text chat, I'll put it in YouTube as well.
Okay. I really appreciate all that. Thank you. I could, if you want to, I can leave, or I could bring up something else. It's up to you. You want to give other people chances, or what?
Sounds good.
Well, there are quite a few people waiting. If we could go to some other people in the audience and bring you back later, we'd be happy to. Does that work well for you?
That works very well for me. I appreciate everything you did.
This was a great conversation. Really appreciate you coming on and having these conversations with us. Thank you.
Okay. See ya.
Nice meeting you, Holy Relic.
So anti-scam angels been in queue for a while. They are making the proposition that God exists. And they had a couple of things they wanted to say. So anti-scam angel, go ahead and tell us a little bit about what's going on today.
And thank you for being anti-scam.
Yes, thank you. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Yes, sir.
Hey, Taco, so sorry for taking so late to reply to you. Hey, TJump, Peter, Amy, and Randolph.
What is up?
Hi. So the debate,
Right.
the stage title is "Convince Us a God Exists," right?
A goddess or a god? Yes.
Yeah, goddess or god. So I guess I'm not gonna be childish and just post a picture of like a Roman god and say, "Hey, this exists," right? This doesn't work.
Was there a question?
Try us. Tell us about your the god you want to present, and we can examine it.
Yeah, exactly. So I'm going to talk about the god. Yeah, the creative gods, like the god who can create something. It's not the god you worship. So like, for example, you can worship anything, but I'm talking about the god who cause everything to exist. So, for example, you guys' existence here is real, I guess. Everyone believes so. Therefore, like for you guys to be here and for this discussion to take place, there must be like a series of like cause and like effect happens. Therefore, like the approach I'm trying to make is if we imagine like there is a bottle, right, an empty bottle, and it's closed, firmly closed. Do you think it's possible for it to have like apple juice inside?
What? I don't understand the question.
Okay, the question is like this. Imagine like you have a bottle and it's firmly closed, right? Do you think it's possible for it to have like apple juice inside
Sure,
at some
sure,
point?
it is, but I don't understand the designer question.
So there is a possibility for this to happen.
Can I
Right.
ask what I think your question is? Which
Yeah.
are you saying there's a bottle that has nothing inside of it and it has a lid on it? How
Nothing
long
inside.
will it take until liquid forms in the bottle? Is that what you're
Not
asking?
any liquid, but I'm talking about like
Anything?
a specific type of liquid, which is apple juice.
Apple juice.
Yes, it's
Okay.
possible that a closed lid has apple juice in it.
See, I
No,
think
like so.
the
So the bottle is
presupposition
totally
is obvious, though. What he's trying to say is there's nothing in it. How long will it take until it randomly, spontaneously generates apple juice with there nothing being inside? I would say that's not what life is,
exactly.
not the universe. I don't think that's an analogy to it. There's reasons why apple juice forms and in bottles, and it takes something natural like a tree, and then you make apple juice that is designed in a bottle. But those are a mixture. It's not spontaneous generation. It's not going to happen. But I don't think that's what a god is. Or are you saying that's what a god is?
No, so what I'm trying to say is like atheists today, they make they say like nothing, something can come from nothing.
No, that's not what we say at
no
all.
one says that.
I guess that's what most of the atheists.
I will
Zero
point out,
atheists.
I agree with these guys that most atheists don't say that. I can't rule it out. I have some views on absolutely nothing and not being able to rule out the possibility of something erupting from it. But I'm not going so far as to say that this is what's actually happened. So I agree with them generally. Most atheists aren't taking this position. That's kind of a straw man argument that comes up from a lot of religious apologists. And it's unfortunate because it misleads people to end up thinking that we have these kinds of views when we don't.
And I'll make a stronger assertion. Something coming from nothing, unless it's Lawrence Krauss writing a book tongue-in-cheek as a response to theists saying it over and over and over, it's generally a theist and a creationist phrase.
Because anti-scam, because technically something from nothing is the theist argument, because there was God and there was nothing else. And then there was God created everything. Well, they don't state that God like created everything out of itself, like it didn't pull its own energy. It simply willed it into existence from nothing. So technically that's a theistic claim that just when you project it onto the atheist, you're saying, well, you don't believe in God, so it's something from nothing. There was no mechanistic God to like magic everything into existence. But that's not what atheists claim. That's not what cosmologists claim. So no. Sorry.
It is what creationists claim that atheists believe.
Yeah, but how would you explain the existence of the world then?
Natural process. I mean, are you talking about the planet or are you talking about the universe?
The whole existence, like for you to be here today.
I think that
I'm here
quantum
because
fields.
I'm here because my parents smashed.
Well, so I think that quantum fields have always existed. They have never not existed. They are uncreated, and the quantum field fluctuations created.
So they came from
matter.
nothing.
No, they didn't come. They've always been. Did God come from nothing?
No, it's the same thing. He was always been.
Right. So we can both just say
because he
it's
is
always
the starting point. Like he's the creation,
right,
the
right.
creator.
So we say the starting point is quantum fields or something like laws of physics.
So we both agree that there must be a starting point.
Sure.
There's a starting point for observability, but there doesn't have to be a starting point for our universe.
Yeah, so basically, like what I believe is this. I believe like the starting point has to be God itself.
Why?
So whether you believe why, because like it is the creator. It's the starting point that created everything.
No, you
to happen.
defined it as the creator, but where's the evidence that this is a creation?
Wait, so why does it have to be a god? Why can't it be laws of physics?
Okay. So it's like this. So we go so back in the time when there's nothing but except this entity, this thing, right? So it has to have like some criteria, like some attributes, right? The free will and the intelligence.
Wait,
So
why?
so it's like
Why are neither of those things seem to be required?
it made something. It caused things to happen.
Yes, all things in physics cause
So
other
it did
things.
something.
You don't need free will for that.
No, but true, but today we have free will. So how can something that doesn't have the free will inherit the free will to other things?
The same way it creates pineapples. Like pineapples didn't exist at the beginning of the universe, but pineapples do exist now. How did no pineapples create something with pineapples? Well, it's because different combinations of laws of physics
But
can
pineapples,
produce.
they don't have like free will. They don't have like intelligence. They
You're
are just atoms.
You're not following. So
Yes.
pineapples did not exist at the Big Bang, but they do exist today,
I'm sorry.
right?
True.
And so free will didn't exist
True.
at the Big Bang, but it does exist today, right? That's possible, right?
True. Yes.
So you don't need.
But
a
it
thing
is the
with,
same elements, just recombined, like in a different shape.
right. So free will could be an emergent property. I don't think free will exists, but if free will did exist, it could be an emergent property like pineapples. It is a thing that results from brains. You don't need it to be in the origin of the universe. It could just be like a pineapple.
Yeah, true. What about intelligence and other things? Like
Same thing.
it's a lot of things that the first thing that caused everything to happen had like inherited to us, the humans, for example,
Well,
that
they're
we
all
don't see
emergent.
like in other.
Emergent properties. So none of those
Yeah,
exists
so
in
you
the
know,
thing.
so you know this, right?
Yes, that's what brains are emergent. Intelligence is
Do
emergent.
you know this, or do you just believe in it? What you're saying?
Yes, I know this. This is what we have from evidence from every single scientific field: neurology, psychology, cognitive science, biology, philosophy. Yes, these things are emergent from brains. That's what the consensus in every academic field is. That's what all the evidence indicates. We know this.
So based on this, we don't need the first cause to be worshipped.
Well, I don't think we would need to worship the first cause anyway, but the first cause just needs to be a quantum field. And the quantum fields can explain everything we see in nature, including brains and humans.
Angel, you there?
All right. Yeah, I'm here. I'm just listening to what he's saying. I guess he's saying something that's beyond my informations.
What he's saying is that there, as far as explanations go, just saying God magically is not an explanation. It's just sticking God as an answer into something that you either lack understanding yourself or information that human beings don't currently possess, or we're in the process of trying to understand ourselves, which
And
is just God of the gaps. So, but we do have a mechanistic explanation when we look at quantum mechanics and we look at physics, and we can use these things to create predictions about, or to form predictions about reality that come true. So the God explanation for God did it is not explanatory, and it's not necessary.
I would say this falls under first cause arguments, but they are rarely why a believer is a theist. So I would ask, is this why you think a God is real? Is this what convinced you?
Yeah, exactly. What convinced me that God is real is like we really need like the creative God is essential, like the first cause.
So you were an atheist, and then you were like, holy shit, we need to have a first cause, and then boom, you were a theist?
So no, basically I was raised in a religious environment, but I have never been following anything. But at some point I was thinking about it, and I wasn't really convinced until like I thought about like this, like the cause thing.
Testing, am I a little louder now for people?
You're good.
A little bit too loud.
I would thank you.
But well, okay. So, but Angel, sorry.
Yeah.
But why is okay? So why is a God necessary? Why do you think a God is necessary?
Because if what I think is if the first cause was like stupid enough to not know how to use its own energy, like there is no laws that help this first cause to use the energy correctly, it's not going to form anything further. Like it will stop there. Like it's going to be like a rock, and it will be always a rock. I've like there is a tree, for example. It has like some like rules that help the tree to create like fruits. So of course we're gonna see fruits all the time.
So quantum fields, they're kind of like the tree. They have rules that create stuff.
So who
called
set the rules? You know,
Nobody. It's just
Yeah.
as a part of its nature. Who set the rules for God?
There's also, I mean, you have to take into account that
Okay,
you have to take into
understandable.
account that we can't eliminate the possibility that this presentation of our universe is the only one and was not the first one. So there's a possibility that this presentation of our universe was not the first presentation of a universe, is not the only presentation of a universe, and will not always be the only presentation of a universe. So we only have a sample size of one. So there's a lot of things that we can't eliminate, a lot of possibilities that we can't eliminate, just because we're working, with one. So we're working with what we have. So you're making a lot of assumptions about things that we can't possibly know. But we have a mechanistic explanation. TJump has presented that. We have a mechanistic explanation that we can work with that, and we can make predictions. With those predictions come true, they verify the model. God does not supply any of these things. So why would you accept God? Why is God necessary when we have a mechanistic explanation that explains it better than God does?
So I guess that's why I should like stop pushing forward. I need to go read more, because TJump here referring me to like some papers where they talk about this stuff. All right. And I guess like JL, I guess like what I'm trying to say is like not about like exactly this one universe or like multiverse, for example. I'm talking about the whole existence in first place, like the why we are here now today. So yeah.
That assumes that there is an agential purpose for our existence, which we don't assert that there is, and there doesn't need to be an agential purpose for our existence. We just acknowledge that we exist, and we need to determine our own purpose for ourselves.
Yeah, I guess.
Right?
So thank you, everyone. Yeah, I guess I should learn more before I talk.
No, it's all good. It's okay. Everyone's
Thank you for
learning.
coming up.
Thank you, Tacos. Sorry again. Thank you, everyone.
It was nice meeting Angel.
Take it easy, Angel.
Thank you very
Next,
much.
We have Luca. He is a cult leader, apparently. I don't really know that. That's just in his name. What's up, Luca?
Hello, Luca. I remember Luca and I spoke a few days ago and had a really good conversation. I'm looking forward to what Luca has to present here today.
Hey, so one, I guess the cult leader thing it's a joke on the server. Someone called me that, so I just added that to my tag. So I wanted to touch on something that came up earlier in the conversation. So there seemed to be a dispute between you and someone else. I think it was the Holy Relics guy, about whether or not God's alleged act, I'm not a Christian, of drowning the world with a flood or something like that would be moral. And I'm just curious about the substance of that debate, because it seemed like Holy Relic had some kind of theory in the background that had to do with like God to make things morally permissible or not. But the thing that I didn't really understand, sort of from the objector side, is what exactly is going to make it the case for any of you that God drowning the world with a flood is like impermissible for God to do? Because presumably that's required for a moral argument against that kind of thing.
Well, for me, it's going to require convincing me that somehow that was an act of morality and that was morally justified. The big problem here, the big elephant in the room here, is the fact that morality is not objective; it is subjective. So this will require that there be we find some agreement on what constitutes moral, and then if we can agree that there are certain moral standards that'll help us to decide this, then we can make non-subjective or objective determinations on whether that act was moral, and then from there we can proceed. So there's a bit of a can of worms on this, I guess you could appreciate.
Well,
I would actually go a little further than that. So, when we assess what morality is, we use our moral intuitions, and so it's usually reflecting morality from the Christian. We say, ask the Christian, is it moral to drown babies? They say no, and so they understand intuitionally that drowning babies is bad. And then we say, well, look, God drowned babies, and so we're using their own intuition to contrast with the Bible, because the way Christians work is they look at their own intuition to try to assess what objective morality is. They think that their own intuition is a reflection of objective morality. And so you can contrast what they believe objective morality is in their hearts to what it says in the Bible. And so we can use people's intuition to understand what morality is. Drowning babies is bad. And then contrast that to the actions done by the Christian God, which are drowning babies. So we don't need an objective standard to assess that it's bad to drown babies. It's irrelevant to the point. The point is simply that if you in your heart understand drowning babies is bad, that's in conflict to the things that God in the Bible did.
So I think I'm probably just going to straightforwardly disagree with that. And then to quickly respond to what Richardson said, I think the issue mainly is that if you're saying that morality is subjective insofar as there's no like substantive sort of external to human agency facts or something like that, I don't know, about moral truths, it seems like that guy is going to disagree with that. I generally take theists in those kind of debates to be committing probably to either some kind of divine command theory or some other theory on which God is the grounds of what is morally permissible. And it's going to follow, for instance, from, let's just say he's positing DCT, divine command theory of some sort. Well, it's going to follow from the basic sort of precepts of DCT that drowning the world, babies included, with a flood is not morally impermissible for God. Drowning babies might be morally wrong for us. That's going to satisfy maybe the intuitional appeal or something like that. But it's not just mere intuitions on their part, presumably, because they're committing to a theory about what makes things morally wrong or not. Now, I don't think DCT is a terribly good theory, but I think the point is that if that's becoming a point in the conversation, there actually needs to be an argument against DCT from the counter side here, or some kind of argument that what people sort of find generally permissible by intuition somehow tracks some kind of fact of the matter, that the theory that God determines these things is going to be incompatible with, which I don't think there is such an argument, so I don't know. Do you think that there was an argument against DCT presented? Because maybe I just didn't hear it.
Just put on the table, I think that ethics and morality are based in situations. I think they also have an objective base in both biology and then the fact that there are subjective conscious creatures. I think when you have those two things on the game board, you start to realize what type of moral decisions. I often explain to my Muslim brothers and sisters that, okay, you're trying to tell us and sell us on the idea that you're about to cut someone's hand off, but if the biology was that their hand grew back, you might have a different view on that. And so I think we can emphatically say that drowning babies is evil, just like
Why?
we could say because you're taking a conscious creature and killing them for no reason.
Well, I mean, there might be a number of reasons. For instance, the person in question might have some kind of goal they have to achieve or something like that. Those are like those are like
I mean,
practical reasons they have.
yo,
They might have some kind of like they might derive some kind of like satisfaction from doing it.
sure, but I think we need
They
to
might have a
fight it.
consequentialist kind of reasoning, like they know some sort of either contextual or intrinsic facts about the baby in question. But that's sort of underdetermined in the hypothesis, and I think that
Supervillain logic, and I think we need to prevent ourselves from these supervillains that you're trying to explain.
so I mean, so the person that you were talking to earlier has a theory in the background about why, for instance, for a person it would be wrong for them to drown a baby or something like that for them,
Well, but that
because
means
and to make it very explicit for them, it's because they think it's God commands not to do that, and God's commands are normatively forceful on human decisions. But I'm not really hearing a theory from the counter position here. Why do you think it's morally impermissible to do something like that?
And all I'm hearing is from the henchmen. You're like, well, the henchmen say the supervillain is great and killing babies is fantastic, so why shouldn't we let them kill babies?
No,
and
I'm saying
say we should try to protect life in general. We should
Why?
try to protect because, well, you're now asking why be moral, but moral is
No, I'm not asking why be
biology and
moral. I'm
conscious.
asking why is that moral?
So I wanted to like try to explain this more clearly. So that the weight against the argument is that people have feelings that drowning babies are wrong. So it's a data point of what morality they think objective morality is. It doesn't matter whether you or I posit objective morality. Christian says, I believe objective morality, and my data points of what I think objective morality are correspond to my intuition. So you give examples of those intuitions. Drowning babies is bad.
Do you mind
Now-
if I interject there?
Sure.
So most people who use DCT or something like that can accept that. But for instance, let me just play Christian's advocate, I guess, not devil's advocate there, so someone might say, for instance, in the supermajority of cases, the act of a human drowning a baby is going to be wrong. And they're going to use that maybe as something like evidence or something like that. I'm very skeptical of like using intuitions as evidence in this kind of discourse, but let's say they do. DCT is going to, in 99.999% of cases, for that person, presumably accommodate that kind of evidence. The theory is probably designed to do that. And
That's great. So
the only
that's
difference that
irrelevant to
you're
my
going to
point.
have between the person who's
That's
advocating
irrelevant.
DCT is that they're going to think it's okay for God to do that.
That's great. So the second part of this argument is that we assess whatever methodology they have and then apply it to like Hitler. And so if this methodology could then apply to Hitler and justify any of Hitler's actions, it
But could it?
shows that this methodology can't differentiate evil from good. It doesn't give you anything to do that. It makes it
To be
circular.
clear, the arguments that people make for DCT could not be applied to Hitler because, for instance,
Yes, they can.
one of the theories. So here's an example. One of the theories, I believe, this is a theory discussed by. Korsgaard isn't a divine command theorist, but this is one of the like routes she brings up in her book Sources of Normativity about how someone who could argue for DCT. For instance, they think there are certain teleological facts and that God is the creator of those or something like that. Hence, God is going to have like a causal role in explaining why certain things have these like normative facts about them, these teleological facts, and so it's going to be wrong for like a human to do something like that. Hitler doesn't have any ability to determine the like intrinsic or teleological content of other beings, and so this could not be used to justify the actions of Hitler.
Literally irrelevant. So it doesn't matter.
Well, no, I'm answering your question.
No, you're not. So literally, it
I did.
doesn't matter. No, you did not. So it literally doesn't matter what they do. The point is to give an example of someone who the Christian says, yes, they're immoral. And could this methodology be applied from a Hitler apologist to say that, no, he's not immoral for the exact same reasons? If it can, then that means that the methodology being used can be applied to literally anything to say literally anything isn't immoral. Yes, it can. So I just proved it could.
Well, so I'll explain exactly how. So again, the person for the kind of theory that I'm giving you as an example, DCT, divine command theory. I'm using it has a background, for instance.
I'm very familiar. I'm explaining to you why that doesn't matter to the argument.
I did let you finish. Do you mind if I explain?
Well, you didn't let me finish. You interrupted every time I spoke, so you
Uh.
did not let me finish. It does not matter
Let's
what you said.
decompress a little bit.
So again, if Christian apologists can say God can drown babies and it's not immoral using divine command theory, whatever model you want, if a Hitler apologist can use the same rationale on Adolf Hitler,
They couldn't.
They can. They literally can. This is literally one of the arguments against divine command theory. I literally have spoken to the experts on the field on this. Yes, they can. So if they just,
I'll explain.
They believe Adolf is a perfect sky daddy who created the universe as an incarnation of God. Yes, it literally can. So
That's not Adolf Hitler.
Yes,
That's
they
a
can.
hypothetical person.
Stop interrupting me. The fact that you're an idiot does not help here. So you can literally apply the
Can we not
same
make the debate
methodology. You're
polemical?
still
I've
interrupting.
not insulted
Still
you. I don't
interrupting.
want to be rude.
Still interrupting.
Can you not be rude to me,
You
please?
literally never let me finish once. Stop talking. I'm an expert on this. You're ignorant on this. The exact same
Can
methodology.
I go to like the other people in the conversation to not have
you
like
have to stop
insults
talking.
thrown my way?
Stop
I don't
talking.
want this to be like a bad
Just
conversation,
stop.
but
We're just
I
gonna move
don't
to the
really
audience.
appreciate like being randomly insulted for no reason.
Well, I'm insulting you for a very good reason. You won't shut up. Let me finish. So shut
I'm not,
up.
not
Shut
terribly
up.
interested in listening
Shut
to you
up.
while you're like screaming, "Shut up" at me.
Okay,
Like I was
okay.
having a
We're just
conversation
gonna-
with someone
we're
else,
just
and
gonna
you
move you.
interjected.
Just gonna move you.
Like,
Just
What's the
move
saying?
you.
Goose fraba. Calm down a little bit.
I'm asking for the conversation to become a little calmer, but I mean,
Can we
not
move this
to
guy to the
point any
audience? I'll
fingers
give
at
the answer. He's
anyone,
done.
but there's
I'm
like
so
a
tired of
person
this.
screaming at me to shut up, and
Shut up. Holy shit.
so can I like return to the conversation I was trying to have with that Amy person, please?
No, idiot.
Okay.
Holy shit.
So
I was a little confused as to why we were discoursing on a hypothetical position that the person who espoused that argument, they're not even here to elucidate on it.
Well, no, he made a good argument. His argument is that divine command theory is a theory that states that moral grounding is whatever God says or whatever, and therefore drowning babies isn't immoral. So what is the point of arguing that drowning babies is immoral? What's the possible reason that could be a good counter argument to divine command theory? And the reason it's a counter argument to divine command theory is because it's a reductio ad absurdum. You take a data point that's obvious to everyone, drowning babies is wrong, and you use that as a way to try to create an intuitional conflict, the cognitive dissonance between the individual and their intuitions and their objective belief that divine command theory. That's the justification. And you can say, if you use this methodology of divine command theory to justify God's action, anyone who believes some sky daddy or divine command Adolf could use the exact same argument to justify Hitler's actions, even though they were wrong. So there's no way within the methodology to differentiate between a correct usage of divine command theory and an incorrect usage, just made up, it's arbitrary. So the reason we can use the drowning babies against the divine command theory is by creating cognitive dissonance, by using their intuitions that certain things are wrong to contradict the actions of the Bible, and then show from whatever methodology they're using is arbitrary because it can be applied to literally anything. That's the answer to his question, but he was too stupid to shut up and listen.
we've concrete plus in queue next. This should be an exciting one.
Concrete Plus.
What's going on, concrete?
Restaurant.
It happens.
TJump just made a weird claim that he's an expert.
Yes.
How did you get your expert status?
By speaking to and discussing with the experts.
Okay, so I've spoken to an expert. I've discussed with an expert. So therefore, I'm an expert.
If you've made progress in the field and they say you have, then yes, sure.
I'm sorry. How do we judge your progress?
Do you want to like bring up an argument for God here? Like, if you want to know my expert status, go talk to the experts I've spoken to and look at the videos where they say, "Yeah, you really know what you're talking about."
Oh, and then that will determine that you're an expert. They say, "Yeah, you know what you're talking about."
Yes, if the experts in the field talk to you and say, "Yes, you know what you're talking about," then yeah, you're an expert. Do you have a question related to the topic?
Oh, okay, awesome. I have a problem with you excluding miracles from being, I guess, verified as being evidence. Now, how is it the case that you've been able to do that? That hand waving?
What I don't know what you're talking about. So I said in history, the field of history and the field of law, miracles, magic, mythical creatures, paranormal, etc. None of those are considered evidence. This isn't me. This is academic fields of history and the legal field of law.
Also, I just want to put on the table that miracles, by their definition, are a defiance of physics. So if you get a physics journal to present an argument or evidence for a defiance of physics, I mean, holy shit, but bring it on.
Well, I don't
No,
think that's
miracles
not
don't
true.
have to be a defiance of physics. And whatever our legal or historical philosophy is, it's just going to be based on the current or local philosophy. So there could be another environment or another time where historically, legally, miracles are admissible, well understood, and accepted. So you pointing to your current or local understanding or philosophy on these subjects doesn't somehow create a universal standard. You understand what I'm saying?
Yes, obviously it's not a universal standard. It's just the best standard with all the evidence we have today. So obviously there were a bunch of goat herders in the past who thought miracles were legitimate. And then today, when we've actually explored those with evidence, we found they're just making shit up. So maybe in the future, when we actually have novel testable predictions of miracles, we might accept miracles. But since they don't exist today and there's no evidence of them today, they're rejected by every academic field because there's no reason to believe it. And so all rational people don't.
Well,
Yeah, you're making a lot of claims.
Concrete, I have a question. I have a question about what
Let me just deal with what you're saying real quick.
Well, I have a question.
All
Right. I want
clarification.
Concrete. I want a clarification about what you're talking about. What do you specifically consider a miracle? Because is there a difference between a miracle and a rare event?
I don't want to get into semantics. So
it's not semantics. I'm trying to understand. I'm trying to understand where you're coming from, Concrete.
I think
if you're citing.
I think you're going to bog down the conversation by getting into semantics.
So, Concrete, would it be fair to say a miracle is just an action done by God or something along those lines?
No, that wouldn't be enough of a definition. Because actions done by God would be flooding the earth, killing the Sodom, or
so
destroying the Sodomites, so on and so forth.
Actions done by God to help or something.
Semantics. Let's not. If you want a quick answer, which we're not going to delve into, it's going to be a highly fortuitous, highly improbable, fortuitous event, right? Highly improbable, fortuitous, highly improbable that the Jews would be killed, but it's not fortuitous. So highly improbable and fortuitous. All right. Now, back to your claim, TJump. Back to your claim, TJump. You said that we have no evidence for miracles. Was that your statement?
Well, we like winning the lottery by your definition would be a miracle.
That's what I was going to bring up.
Oh man. Look,
so it's like a supernatural thing, right?
That it would be. Look, I'll add another part that it would be in alignment with God's nature. So God is not a gambler. He's not into gambling. I think lottery would be a part of gambling.
Okay, well, that's good. That's good. Let's stick with that one. So if it has to be in alignment with God's nature.
My question now?
So
your question.
Yes, that's what I'm going for. So if it has to be in alignment with God's nature, hold on. If it has to be in alignment with God's nature, you need evidence of God's nature. Otherwise, anything either could be or could not be. And
we have evidence of God's nature.
No, we don't. That's why there's no evidence of miracles.
See, John, no, I don't even know. You're from the school of Matt Dillahunty. Matt Dillahunty knows that you should never say there is no evidence for God. And
I'm
yet
not from the school of Matt
you
Dillahunty.
Continually make this mistake. So what evidence is there any information or facts, information, events, arguments that could be used to forward the likelihood of a proposition being true? A proposition on the table is God.
Novel testable predictions.
Novel testable predictions is a methodology used in natural sciences. Does not apply to every proposition. I don't know why you think that you can use
it applies to literally anything. One sec. It doesn't just apply to the natural sciences.
I don't know why you think you can use a fork to plug up.
No concrete. No concrete. This applies to anything. No,
but it's not
concrete.
tool that's
no concrete.
For all propositions.
Concrete. This applies to all propositions to differentiate imagination from reality. All of them.
Look, did Julius Caesar exist?
Yes.
All right. What novel testable prediction are you gonna? What experiment you think you're going to be able to conduct? Tell us whether or not Julius Caesar existed.
Well, because he's a human being, and human beings already have an empirical basis. We can say
He is a dead human being that lived thousands of years ago. If he
yes,
did.
all of those
How
things, all of those things have an empirical basis.
Give us an experiment
Concrete. Let
to
me
show
answer.
that
Concrete. So all things like novel testable predictions apply to classes. So do we show humans exist? Yes, humans exist. Did they exist in the past? Yes, they exist in the past. So we have empirical bases for all of those things. So in history,
that is an observation.
Wait, I'm answering concrete. So in history, historical claims like I saw a dog or Julius Caesar existed are reasonable in history because there's already empirical evidence of dogs and humans. The things that are not reasonable in history. One sec. So the things that are not reasonable in history are miracles and magic. Wait. I'm trying to answer concrete. I'm going to move to the audience. You got to let me answer. So the things that are not evidence in history are miracles, magic, mythical creatures, things that we have no empirical basis for. So saying Julius Caesar existed, there's already been novel testable predictions for humans. We already know humans existed. So saying a human existed in the past is completely reasonable to believe based on historical accounts.
Okay, based on that very poor logic, humans exist, therefore any figure that is referenced in history exists. Will then account for Jesus.
No. So
then, because we know humans observed particular and wrote about particular things that Jesus did, everything that Jesus did is now accounted for. So you just shot yourself in the face, and now you're going to try to walk it off. It's a headshot. It's fatal.
No concrete. So this is very, very basic. It says if there's an empirical evidence of a thing that exists, then testimony of it can count. Wait, stop interrupting. Stop interrupting, concrete. Humans.
You're making it so laborious, man.
Bye. So humans exist. The fact that we have empirical evidence, novel testable predictions that show humans exist, anything that has a current empirical basis, then historical claims in the past can be considered evidence for that. Doesn't mean they're good evidence. Doesn't mean everyone who's claimed to exist in historical text
question.
exists.
Are people getting kicked from the stage?
Yeah, if they interrupt me, I'm just going to move them to the audience. So I need to be able to finish the statement. So if humans exist today, we have empirical evidence of humans.
Why are people getting kicked from the stage?
Because he keeps interrupting me, like you are now. So
like
I want to be able to finish my points. I want to be able to finish my points. So if, like concrete was asking, the reason it's reasonable in history to accept humans existed in the past, like Julius Caesar, is because we have empirical evidence humans exist. Things that don't have an empirical evidence, like unicorns or miracles or magic, it's not reasonable to believe from historical testimony. It's not that you believe every historical testimony. It's that testimony at least counts as evidence if it's for something that has an empirical basis. That's the criteria.
Okay.
I just want to point out that miracle. Oh, okay. So he's back. I'm just want to ask a question. So miracle definition: a surprising and welcome event that is not explicable by natural or scientific laws and is therefore considered to be the work of a divine agency. Using that definition, I can assert miracles do not exist. So how do we know which one of us is correct?
Well, I want to deal with what TJump was just saying, which is basically a reiteration of his first point with actually no changes that would negate the existence of Jesus Christ, right?
Jesus did exist.
All he did was label it great. And humans, since we accept human testimony, because Julius Caesar's existence is not merely because he's a human, it's because it was testified by other human beings that he existed. So your entire argument is horrible. And so now we'll just move on to the testimony of Jesus Christ. And along with his existence, there was testified of his miracles. So now you have the miracles brought into evidence by your methodology.
I literally just explained that.
You are so ridiculous, bro. You didn't see it coming. You shot yourself in the face.
That's what he or she...
Now you're done.
I literally explained that. I said testimony of things that have an empirical basis are reasonable evidence in history. Testimony of things that don't have an empirical basis, like miracles, are not. It's not even my thing. This is a thing in history. You can read about it in No, this is a fact of history. You can read about it in Michael Lacona's paper, Historians and Miracle Claims. It literally says this. This is not my claim. This is historians, the consensus in history.
Yeah, so pointing to Michael Lacona or whatever position he may hold,
He's a Christian.
I know he's a Christian apologist. So just because he has a philosophy about miracles and their evidentiary classification doesn't mean that this is like undisputable, irrefutable fact of the matter.
No.
This is just a philosophy and position on a phenomenon.
No, he's
I
disagreeing.
don't share it.
No.
Look, bro,
One sec.
You hate it when you overtalk, but you're doing a thing. I know you're a diva. You can't control yourself.
Concrete, stop calling him names and have a back and forth with him.
I'm okay
interrupt.
with
Tell him to stop over talking.
I'm okay with him calling me names, but wait. I just want to clarify. Mike Lacona is arguing for miracles. So he's in the paper. He's specifically saying that the consensus of historians in all fields of history
that doesn't change anything about my argument.
Concrete.
It's a philosophical position.
So
it's not an ontological position.
Concrete.
It's not a fact of the matter. It's a philosophical position. Do you understand the difference?
Concrete. So my argument is that the consensus. Wait.
Bro, now you need to engage, right? You can't just sit here and lecture.
No.
And
You're deflecting. You're deflecting and not addressing the point.
No, I'm not. I addressed it straightforward.
No.
It doesn't matter his philosophical position about miracles.
I'm not talking.
I do not care.
Concrete.
Your standard of evidence was used to justify.
I'm going to move you to the audience. I'm going to move you to the audience. You got to shut up. You got to shut up. You got to shut up. So Mike Lacona is a Christian. He is arguing that we should accept miracles. In the paper, he literally describes the consensus of historians in every academic field, which is what you're arguing against. You're arguing against the consensus of the entire methodology of history. That's the part that I'm talking about. So if you want to disagree with that, that's fine. But this is not my position. This is not Mike Lacona's position. This is the consensus of experts in the field of history. That's the thing you're arguing against.
So I'll pull him back up. Please stop kicking him to the audience. Concrete, stop interrupting TJump. TJump, stop interrupting him. When y'all finish conversing, we can go ahead and move on. But one at a time. Come on.
So basically what TJump did was he cut me off and he's accusing me of derailing.
Okay, we're not
for something. Let me just
we're not doing meta.
Position. Just chill, bro.
Concrete, drop the meta and get to the point.
My homies said so. I don't care about what your homies said. What I care about is what is factual. It is a fact of the matter that people reported the miracles of Jesus Christ. Now, if it's the case that you hold to a philosophical position that those people cannot be relied upon, that is a you issue. Doesn't mean that I should take on your philosophy. All right, great. So now we're just going to move on to another aspect of what you brought up was, can we know that Julius Caesar is a real person? Yes, because humans exist. And humans have reported events in history. So I guess Paul Bunyan exists. I guess Aquaman exists, or the Loch Ness Monster, or any other entity that's been reported on. It now necessarily exists because of the TJump standard. Do you agree?
Moron. I've literally explained this like 4 times now. If we have empirical evidence something exists, then that means testimony in historical claims is evidence. So if someone had testimony that some guy named Xerxes exists, that testimony would be evidence. Does not mean Xerxes exists, idiot, but it is evidence. It is valid evidence to bring testimony for things that have an empirical basis.
Yeah, what do you think empirical means? Because I think you have a misunderstanding.
Verified through sense experience.
Okay, great. So
I did not have an incorrect understanding, did I, Concrete? You were wrong again.
Okay, great, but you're still misusing it.
What?
So if you have an understanding that's correct and you're still misusing it, there's still an issue, and I'm going to suss that out right now. So, Jesus Christ.
So how did he misuse it?
I'm telling you now, dummy. Jesus Christ and his miracles were reported through what means, TJump?
Testimony.
TJump. And what was the basis of the testimony?
People's imagination.
There it is, ladies and gentlemen. So now what TJump has done is he knows that the answer is observation, that people observe Jesus Christ, i.e. Thomas, who observed that Jesus died and required that Jesus show him his wounds within his hands, which Jesus did. And thus we have the testimony of Thomas that Jesus had resurrected with a full body. And what TJump is now going to say is that every instance within the gospel, while he grants that you weren't imagining the existence of Jesus, you, however, imagined all the supernatural events. And then I guess you weren't imagining the natural events. So you saw the natural events, such that you were able to accurately document this human's existence. But everything that was a supernatural event, multiply attested to, was the imagination of multiple people simultaneously, which we know is not an actual psychological phenomenon, right?
Well,
Mass
we do.
hallucinations, as the prior person stated, is not a psychological phenomenon.
Yes, it is.
And guess who brought that up? Guess who brought that up? I think it was Michael Lacona in the debate with Richard Carrier, right? Who wanted to attest that all of these statements could have been a hallucination. So no, doesn't
it's
exist.
wrong. So that's wrong. Mass hallucinations do exist. We actually have a technical name for them. They're called folia do. They literally do exist. We know they literally happen. Communal reinforcement is another example. Yes, we do have evidence that happen. But the first things you said were correct. You seeing Jesus exists as a human, yes, that's reasonable to believe based on historical testimony. Seeing him raised from the dead is not reasonable. That is the reasonable conclusion is yes, you made it up in your imagination. That is something that is very common. It's called bereavement delusion. So you got that part right, Concrete. The fact that you see Jesus existing as a human is rational based on historical testimony. Miracles, not rational. That's the consensus of all the experts who have studied the field for decades. Yes.
All right, great. So now what we have is an alternate explanation. And for TJump's current existence and our experience of TJump right here, right now, visually, audibly, there could be an alternate explanation, which is we're all hallucinating it right now. And if it's the case that somebody else was to hear the recording, not only are we hallucinating it, it was fabricated through some other AI means, right? So that's all that's happening. So now, if it's the case that we were to take those two theories, hypotheses, mass hallucination or the event actually happened, we'd apply Occam's razor to
No, I never said
mass
any of that.
hallucination. We'd apply. I'm talking about what rational people are doing, not you.
No, you
So
were talking
what
about
rational
my
people
method, right?
You're
You were
over
talking
talking
about my
me,
method.
bro. You're over talking me, bro. So what we would do is apply Occam's razor to the mass hallucination theory and say that most people or groups of people are not going to be able to simultaneously and identically have the same hallucination that they are reporting in identical manner. So just think about what's happening. Something that is not happening in the real world is happening psychologically across multiple people in an identical fashion. Now, TJump believes that this phenomenon is real, mass hallucination, but there's no reason that a normal human being should believe that this is real. The most likely cause is that the event actually occurred and multiple people witnessed it at the same time.
Just interrupt that even though you say normal people, it is the consensus of scholars that either Jesus did not resurrect or no position at all.
That's just a claim. If you could post it in chat, I'd love to read it.
I gave you the reference. Historians of Miracle Claims, Mike Lacona, he literally goes through that exactly what you just asked
Yeah,
for. But
I gave you my refutation for that.
you don't like it. You don't like that historians disagree with your silly position. But wait, I wanted to go back. To the other nonsense you just said.
Bro.
So folie à deux. I'm looking at a PubMed journal. Folie à deux. Folie à deux is defined as an identical or similar mental disorder affecting two or more individuals, usually members of the close family, 2 case reports of this condition are presented in a brief review of this literature. Yes, we know this happens. This is the most plausible explanation, not that Jesus magically Sky Daddy rose from the dead. That was actually one of these very well-known mental disorders that do happen to groups of people. Yes, there are mass delusions, and the 500 isn't an example, because that we can see like in the miracles of Fatima and whatever, and Santi Sai Baba. Nothing magical happened there. That one's really easy to explain. The bereavement delusions, which were of the apostles, are very easy to explain as Folia do, which is what the consensus is on the topic. So yes, all of the things I listed are the most plausible, rational explanations, and are far better than Sky Daddy rose from the dead.
Yeah, that's going to be based on your prior philosophical commitments, and that's fine. I'm not going to argue with you about what you take to be true in the world, right? Because you're also an evolutionist. You're also someone who probably believes in a eternal universe. So there's going to be a myriad of things that you believe in that are nonsensical. In order to promulgate your beliefs, right? I don't care.
No.
What I care about is what we understand to be normal and reasonable and rational. And it is normal, reasonable, and rational, especially when human beings experience miracles for themselves. We now are going to be able to juxtapose your theoretical and philosophical positions with actual human events that are on a personal level.
Concrete,
Then
every
what's gonna
single,
happen
a
from there-
concrete,
one second,
concrete,
though. I'm
every
almost
single,
done, bro. I'm
no,
almost done, bro.
concrete,
I'm
every
almost
single
done.
miracle that
I'm
has been
almost
done,
done, bro. I'm
concrete,
almost done, bro.
concrete,
I'm almost
every
done,
single,
bro.
I'm done, I'm done. This, he's being intellectually dishonest at this point, and he's making claims that are unfounded, and this has become a dick measuring contest, and it's not getting us anywhere. We're talking ourselves in circles. TJump has explained his position a number of times. There is no point in continuing with that, because this is just dick measuring at this point.
Well, I did want to
whole
say
point-
one extra thing. So my position is based on empirical verified evidence that we can know exists things in reality. We know Folia do exist. We know bereavement delusion exists. We have lots of evidence that these exist. So these are kind of like dogs, things we have past evidence they exist. And Concrete wants to say magic and unicorns exist, even though we have no past evidence of those. The most rational thing is the thing that we have evidence actually exists. That's the better explanation by definition. And so simply him calling it a philosophical position is just him denying the past evidence. That's all it is.
Or implying that you're biased in some way because you hold particular positions that are evidence based. So you're inclined to take other positions based upon it. Just that's all he was doing, was saying that you're inherently biased against it. That's why you don't accept it, and that's not the way this flies. So
Yep.
that's intellectually dishonest, and at this point, he's just up here to waste time. So
Just before you start that, we need to bring Livka back up. We were going to do that.
Oh, yep. Dietrich, go ahead and put your hand back up. Luca, I invited you back up.
Hello. So, to very quickly sort of recapitulate what we were saying, what was going on. So what I was saying was that the particular person you were talking to was committing to a certain view in metaethics. I'm going to interpret him as committing to some kind of divine command theory. I don't know exactly what kind of underlying theory is there for him, but I'm just going to interpret him as using some kind of teleological account of why God's commands have moral authority for us. So the thing I was saying was basically that it's not really going to be very informative to say that he has intuitions about whether or not he's going to drown babies. And I didn't really hear anything from the Contra side giving an argument as to why, on his view, God drowning babies is going to be wrong. And so I'm just wondering why there wasn't an argument presented against his view, particularly because it sounded like you guys wanted to run an internal critique. So I'm just wondering what the argument would have been there.
I literally explained that last time. You're just not paying attention.
Does anyone else want to answer?
no, I don't want to try and hypothesize what the dude's point is. Holy Relic is not here, so I would rather have him elucidate on his own position to try and suss out what he meant. I just kind of pointless to hypothesize about what was the point without him being here to represent himself. So
I will say, just going back to the earlier point, I think it's trivially easy to show that God is more evil than Hitler.
Well, so if the metaethical theory in the background particularly bases what's moral and what's not on like the complex relationship between like God's nature and human nature or something like that, well, absent an argument for that, and against that rather, it's not going to be particularly easy at all, I suppose, mainly because there's going to be like relevant asimilarity between Hitler and God, mainly that, for instance, if what makes God's commands obligatory for us is some kind of causal relationship he has with our obligations.
Well, let's go into the logistics.
So.
Let's go in. Let's see. Who do you want to start with first? How many did Hitler kill?
Well, but the point is, killing people by itself...
Well, I mean, come on!
Well, so the idea is just this. Killing people in and of itself, on this view, isn't going to be wrong, because he's not committing to something like utilitarianism or some kind of hedonism or something like that, on which the consequence of killing someone is considered as like a pro tanto reason for abandoning that course of action. It's going to be whether or not it was impermissible to kill that person or something like that. And so while it may be impermissible for Hitler to kill a person, or to command the Holocaust or something like that, it won't be impermissible for God to command a very similar sort of thing, particularly because of the moral authority that the advocate of DCT says that God has in virtue of his creation of the world or something like that, that Hitler obviously is going to lack, because Hitler is a human being. It's very similar to, for instance, well, just to elaborate, it's going to be a theological voluntarist is going to usually analogize God with something like a just government. So in just the same way as it is impermissible for either you or I to imprison someone for many, many years, presumably it's not impermissible for our governments to do the very same thing. And so that's going to be the kind of authority that they're particularly talking about, right?
That he somehow has an authority to just kill. Well, I did want to go back to numbers because we were just comparing. Mm-hmm. So, we have the millions and millions of that Hitler killed, but God did kill everybody, right? So it does seem like God is pulling ahead in the evil category versus Hitler, at least if we were just look at it population-wise.
Why is killing a person intrinsically evil?
Well,
hey, real fast,
it's the only reason.
Okay. TJump, can you just read group chat when you get a moment? Sorry,
where
continue.
Is that?
In
the PNR thing or in the like other thing?
Oh, it's a private chat group.
So the idea is that the person who advocates DCT, that kind of metaethical theory, is probably going to disagree that there's an intrinsic moral status to like some kind of relation like X and Y, of where X and Y are two persons, X kills Y. For instance, there might be morally sufficient reasons for someone to kill another person. Like, let's say they're invading your house and you have like the obligation to protect your family, and so you kill them in the pursuit of protecting your family. Or the other person has, for instance, committed an immoral action sufficient such that they deserve to be killed or something like that. That's actually what the person you were talking to about this brought up, that he thought that in the flood account, for instance, the people who died were in sufficiently like sort of illicit moral situations that it was just for them to be killed. And so
exactly, the babies were evil enough that they were worthy of drowning.
I don't really. So you're saying that as if it's like an objection, but I don't see substantively why, on that view, something like even a baby could be held like blameworthy for something. Do you have an argument against that? Or
objection, it just sounds like God. Like, it sounds like it's evil and stupid and things that humans wouldn't do, but really God has this 4D chess, and he's so powerful that it actually kind of makes it right. Like, is that the...
So, do you have an argument particularly as to why it's intrinsically wrong for you to, like, punish someone or like that, or
Or because it's basically the only reason that we have ethics and morality is biology and conscious creatures, and that if you're
Well,
actually
they're-
talking about something else, you're not talking about ethics or morality. You're asking why be ethical or moral.
to be very clear, if that's an argument against someone who's an advocate of divine command theory, that would be a question-begging argument, because that's to assert that their position
Why?
is false in the very argument, like in one of the premises of the argument that you're giving.
I would
So that can't be a good argument against their position.
Well, no. It could be that God exists and he's a moral monster.
Well, so the advocate of divine command theory thinks that the reason there are moral obligations is because God exists. So,
But that
no,
doesn't make sense.
With that theory in the background, well, so whether or not it makes sense to you is not exactly logically relevant as to whether or not the position is true or not.
Should it make sense to anybody?
Well, I mean, theological voluntarism, while I think the theory itself is actually false, it's a theory that makes sense insofar as I can understand like authors like Hare who defend it.
Hey, get me there. What's a good moral reason to drown babies?
Well, so there are obviously like intuitive reasons for this. For instance, I think that you could probably set up some kind of trolley scenario where most people would say that drowning a baby can be morally permissible, just in case the consequence of it is preventing, like, I don't know, the death of the entire human race or something like that. I think most people would say that you're morally in fact obliged to do something like that, even if the act itself is distasteful. If there's like some significantly morally weighted consequence sort of downstream to the continued existence of this baby, like, I don't know, again, like it becoming Hitler, for instance, that's actually a very like common example. Would you kill baby Hitler? And I think the last time Q and various different other like statistics organizers actually like did questioning on that, most people indicated that it would be morally permissible if distasteful to kill an infant Hitler.
And then they would kill the vast majority of people born from Israel post-Hitler.
I'm not really sure why that. I don't know if that's relevant. So
well,
the main point
you just
is
said
that
it's really easy to kill Hitler, and then you just killed millions, if not more, people really quickly. But that's irrelevant to the question of whether God.
Killing people, because again, in this, we're not granting that killing people is intrinsically wrong. Killing people on something like a consequential count is going to be wrong only insofar as it like has something to do with some like morally relevant consequence down the line. That seems to be kind of what you're talking about. Or the person, again, who's the divine command theorist, is going to say that it has to do with God, with the authoritative commands of God, whether or not something is morally wrong. It's not just like killing people is intrinsically wrong. So do you have a particular argument as to why divine command theory is like self-saltifying or incoherent or something like that?
Generally speaking, because might is right is a fallacy.
Well,
so his question, he's asking,
might makes right is not the position of the theological voluntarist.
Wait, so just to clarify, he's what he's asking is that God, the divine command theory says the ontology of morality. There's an objective morality and it comes from God. And he's saying, well, do you have a different ontology that's like a contrary to that? And that's not the point of the argument. It's irrelevant to the argument. The argument is using.
That's not what I'm asking for, actually.
It is actually. You're saying why would divine command theory be wrong? Do you have a different ontology that's a better one or something more supported? How is that one wrong?
Well, no, I asked her an objection for divine command theory.
How is it wrong? Oh my God, you're dumb.
Do you have?
I'm not really entirely. I'm just going to not. I'm just going to not talk to you because it seems that there's like not a point in engaging with someone who's like extremely polemical and very rude. So, Amy, continue, please.
I just think that divine command theory is flawed because it sets up the premise that everything that he does is right, even when it looks horrible and wrong to us and has no explanation. And that, to me, is the same type of things we actually got from SS officers who thought they were doing right and thought they were doing things for a higher order.
Well, I mean, a divine command theorist does have an explanation for why it's right. I mean, for instance, like Hare defends like a moral supervenience thesis. Not to go into the specifics on that, but like basically the idea is that like generally theological voluntarists like divine command theorists are going to say that it's because of God's position of moral authority or something along those lines. It's licit for him to do things that are obviously are illicit for us. And they can explain the intuition because we're analogizing from our experiences, they'll say, or something like that. Like it's in most cases, like in 99% of cases, for instance, killing a baby or something like that is going to be wrong. And so it's obviously going to be intuitive for us, generalizing from those experiences, that it's obviously going to appear wrong to us that God would do such a thing. But the divine command theorists would then say, well, on further explanation, and like presumably some kind of like actual good justification for the theory in the background, the intuition that it's wrong for God should disappear in a sufficiently educated person, or they should at least be able to reject the intuition as sort of faulty. And so the point is, if you're having a conversation forwards that theory, just saying that it's counterintuitive or something like that isn't really an terribly contributory response. And so what I'm advocating is that you should develop something like an argument as to why divine command theory is like either like a not a tenable position, or if you think that there's an argument, for instance, for some other kind of moral theory that's like sort of that falsifies sort of implicitly divine command theory, well, what would it be? Like, why is it wrong, for instance, for God to kill a baby?
I think many atheists, agnostics, non-believers, we struggle with seeing God as a moral agent at all. Like they say he's the most, he's super, he goes above and beyond, and he does many, many, many horrible things. And we have a trouble kind of squaring that circle.
So why are those, when you say those things are horrible, that you like find those things distasteful, or do you think that you have an argument particularly as to why they would be wrong?
See, don't you think that is a politician-like answer? Like every time I'm like, why does God smash babies on stones? You're like, well, why is it so bad to bash babies on stones? Like we have to go to the root of why be ethical, why be moral in general. When we are observing evil events, why should we look at this God who to us is doing super crazy, horrific things and go, wow, we'll just really understand it once we die?
Well, so I'm not granting the assertion that they're evil. I mean, so again, full disclosure, I'm an atheist. I don't agree with divine command theory. I don't think there's a God in the first place. Okay. I'm also not a moral realist. I don't think there are such things as good or evil events or actions. So the point is that if you're having a conversation with someone who has a different metaethical position from yours, asserting something that's yielded by your position in either meta or normative ethics isn't really going to be an objection to what they're saying. And I'm asking, like, don't you think it would be better if you developed an argument for the position that you have rather than just sort of asserting the conclusion of it?
I think there are good reasons. Well, first of all, just let me say that I think atheists are split, like between objective and subjective morality. I
wouldn't fall into that dichotomy. I don't think there is such a thing as moral. There are such things as moral facts at all. I'm not a subjective or objective moral theorist in any way.
I think we can develop good naturalistic reasons as to why we should not be bashing babies on rocks and why we should be criminalizing people who do so.
That may or may not be the case, but I mean, for instance, do you have like an argument as particularly why it's like intrinsically morally wrong to do something like around a baby? Because I mean, it's going to be needed.
Because I think that biology is grounded objectively in biology, and then it is the subjective notion of consciousness. So things that can feel pain. So once again, I'll go back to the Muslim example. I go with cutting off hands. If we cut someone's hand off and they feel no pain and it keeps on growing back, is it a punishment? Is it morally unwrong? Probably not, because we're basically doing something that is not painful and that keeps on growing back. It is the fact that we are making, if someone steals, this is not a big horrific crime, and you are altering their biology, you're torturing their consciousness, you're altering it in a way that we cannot change it back. And so that's a big deal.
Why is it wrong to cause someone pain?
Once again, what is your definition of something? What is morality? What is ethics?
So in general, ethics is going to be a branch of philosophy that has to do with sort of the normative status of certain actions or events, depending on how you're going to use it. So, for instance, one of the statuses we're going to talk about is either permissible or impermissible, and to say that something is wrong is to say that it's impermissible for that thing to either happen or to bring that thing about, depending on how we're talking. And what I'm asking is, particularly, why is it that it's impermissible to cause someone pain?
And I would say that's really what we're dealing with. Pain is the root of it all.
What?
We're dealing with conscious creatures. We are dealing with, the reason that solitary confinement it splits among ethical philosophers is because you are putting someone alone and they are torturing themselves mentally. These are the types of questions that we deal with when it comes with biology and conscious creatures. That is what ethics is.
So, sure, we can grant that ethics is presumably is going to be talking about whether it's obviously there presumably needs to be someone it's impermissible for. But the question I have that maybe I didn't hear it is an answer for is, why is it impermissible to cause someone else pain, sort of intrinsically?
I'm saying you're asking why be moral. You're asking. I think
I'm asking why is it immoral?
Because you're torturing them.
Why is that immoral?
Once again, now you're asking, why is torture immoral? Why is murder immoral?
So murder, I'm not asking specifically because at least if you look at the general definitions of murder, it's like unjustified or impermissible killing. So it would be more accurate to say I'm asking why do we think there are any murders? I mean, it seems like we're actually going to need an argument as to why these actions are morally impermissible to say that someone is asking or something like that. Why be moral? Because we don't have a groundwork in the background of this conversation to establish why things are immoral in the first place.
Murders happen because we are unperfect animals running around trying our best. And sometimes we have psychopaths that we have to deal with that are biologically dispositioned to do horrible things. They even find joy from torturing people. And some people are just given bad luck. In fact, part of our judicial system is trying to find intent. Are you going to do this again?
So when you say those things are horrible, are you saying that those things are distasteful, or are you saying they're wrong? Because one of them is a perception that I'd probably share.
Are you convincing God exists right now, or what's going on? Oh,
so because the question I have, I'm not a Christian. I'm not a theist. So the question I had initially, because it seemed like there was a lot of things that were a little peculiar in the early conversation, like just sort of asserting that certain things that a god would be doing were morally wrong, but I didn't really hear a background moral theory. And that's what I'm trying to get at. What is this background moral theory that makes those things wrong? I mean,
well, we were operating
none of those rely on religion,
we were
right?
Operating off of what Holy Relics presented to us.
Well,
and he didn't bring up anything, so we weren't going to put words in his mouth or assume anything about it. And obviously, we got the sense that he wasn't prepared and really didn't want to go into these headier topics. Because he acknowledged that. He said, I'm not really prepared to go into this. It's not something I want to digress on. So we didn't push him on it.
Well,
so
I believe he did say divine command theory at one point. So let's be charitable.
I don't recall him saying that, but this seems very much like a conversation that you should be having with Holy Relic, not with us.
Well, so the question I'm having, the thing you just said, for instance, if you were operating on what he's saying, because he didn't say the words divine command theory. He did say, though, that God determines what's right or wrong. That's a component of divine command theory usually. And so presumably if you're operating on that kind of definition, you can't be presenting counterexamples when you present, for instance, the flood, because if God does it and God is sort of the standard for what's right and wrong according to him, that's not incompatible. That God did it, that would be right, correct?
I mean, that's saying if God, everything God does is good, does something horrible, is it good? I guess technically, but you're not going to get a conscious moral agent, at least an atheist, agnostic, non-believer, on board that, because to us, it just looks horrible. And what it's saying, in essence, is, look, I know on the surface it looks absolutely horrible and terrible, and it seems like a human could make easily a better decision than what's going on right now, but just go with it, because technically speaking, God has this 5D plan in the background that you can't see. But without evidence for that 5D plan, I'm sorry, it just looks horrible to us.
So, if I remember correctly,
I can understand you saying it looks horrible, and I agree, it does look bad, but the point is, it was being interjected as a counterexample, and I think you would agree, no, it can't be a counterexample, right?
No, Luke, it was a counter to his claim that God possessed the attribute of moral perfection.
Well, so God's possessing an attribute of, God's possessing an attribute of moral perfection on DCT is probably like trivial. It's not really terribly substantive because God determines what's more.
That's why we just countered. That's why we just countered with the logical contradiction that moral perfection creates, given God's actions and given God's other attributes that he also said that God is all powerful. God is all knowing. If
God's the standard for morality, nothing God does can't be a counterexample.
It can be if there's a possibility. It can be if the possibility exists that there is a better way of doing it that doesn't elicit destruction and death.
But that's question begging that those things are intrinsically wrong.
Move on. He's asked the same question like 50 times, and I answered it. I said exactly what he was saying, and he's delusional. Like, can we move on?
So, JL, do you get what I'm saying? To say there's a better alternative is to beg the question against his position. That's not a good argument.
Yeah, we've got other people in queue. We do appreciate you coming up.
Okay, that's fine. I mean, I'm
not convinced that there's a God, so thank you. Have a good one.
Well, maybe give him another 30 seconds to finish up or something might be good. But and then we should move on. Yes.
Yeah, but Amy, what he was asking was about moral ontology. He was asking why is divine command theory wrong? Because if you accept it, then it's right to drown babies, and so saying it's wrong to drown babies isn't relevant to their position. In order to make a valid objection, you'd have to object to divine command theory, say why it's wrong, like present a difference.
That's right, actually. Thank you.
It's exactly what I said last time, which you said was wrong.
So, no, you said something different earlier, but again, I'm not continuing the conversation with you. To close, if you want to make arguments against theists who are forwarding divine command theory, I suggest reading, like, for instance, Christine Korsgaard has a very good book, particularly Why, that covers, like, it has I believe a third of the book is why voluntarism and metaethics is like a completely untenable position. It's called Sources of Normativity by Christine Korsgaard. I would highly suggest at least reading the theological voluntarism subsection of that book. It's only like 40 pages long. It's very short. It's very short. It's a good argument. Good talking with you all today. And hopefully you can have better conversation with theists in the future with that in the background. Thanks.
Thank you very much.
Oh God, he was worthless.
Come on, TJump, don't say that. Dietrich has been...
that we were going to make the assumption that Holy Relic was talking about divine command theory. He didn't bring it up. He didn't even bring up something that we could relate to that. He was just making a commentary of what he believes. So there was no point in diving into that whole thing.
Well, he wasn't making a comment about the previous guy. He was objecting to our counter argument to divine command theory. It didn't matter what anybody else said. So he was specifically saying
we were never addressing divine command theory is the problem.
Well, any God-based.
Relic never brought it up. He never alluded to it, and we didn't address it because he didn't.
It wasn't about Relic.
It was about Holy Relic.
No. He was specifically objecting to our objection to any God-based morality. Divine command theory is one example. So any God-based morality, which says God doing it is fine.
So, but let's go on to Dietrich because
that was his point.
No,
Dietrich
at the very beginning of the statement, he said that he was talking about Holy Relic, but nonetheless, it's beside the point. Dietrich, what's going on?
Hello. So I hope you guys are doing all right. You know, I think it's cool to have people from another channel come on here and have intellectual conversation.
Yeah.
But you know, so one thing, you know, obviously the first thing I thought when I saw this was kind of a shifting of the burden of proof here, because God, as a necessary being, like is by definition required. So what we're really talking about is, since I don't believe, like, can you, like, you must instantiate this for me, otherwise I don't have to. I think that's the wrong approach. However, it's not a big deal. Like, I understand at the end of the day, it's just a conversation. But I can't convince you of anything. I cannot
Sure,
force you
you
to
could
believe
you could
something.
present no, you could present evidence that is convincing, that is sufficient.
And I would actually
It
say,
depends on your standard of evidence, does not.
you're saying God is a necessary being, and so you're saying that we are contingent on God. But I would like to know, I think that God is contingent on us. So if humans went away, so with these concepts of God. So how do we know which one of us is right?
Well, I wouldn't fully disagree with that, because in a sense, like, if there was a disembodied, like, mind that's not God, but existed on this earth, and, you know, it's just like us, but the earth was actually empty. There was nobody there. There were no animals. It's just you know, a dust rock, like some space place, right? Well, then, yeah, it'd probably be very hard to come to a conclusion without, like, while being ignorant. So I'm not going to fully disagree with you on that. But like, to a degree, yeah, we can. I think people are a large part of the evidence for God. Firstly, that so many people believe in God, and that the idea of God is ubiquitous among all cultures, kind of showing there's a need for God. But also, again, like with the standard of evidence, you know, I would have to know your standard of evidence to be able to convince you of anything. So in the court of law, you know that there's a standard that shows you can reach, like, a little probability based on even circumstantial evidence. Then, or like, if it's high enough, then you can, like, go ahead and convict somebody. But if it's not, even if it is circumstantial and it could be probable, if it's not, you know, actually, what is it, beyond the reasonable, what is that phrase they use? Reasonable, like, no, I forgot what the term is. But it's, you got to be, like, pretty sure about it, right? So is that the standard you would say you're using? Like, would you say that you're trying to put God on trial, so to speak?
Evidence is just that which can differentiate imagination from reality. So any kind of evidence that can show this is not just a figment of your imagination is evidence.
Yeah, and I mean, for instance, the Bible is one example of how
source of
there are historical claims. There are historical claims in the Bible, so that is one
fallacy
place we can find evidence.
Fallacy from composition. Just because that there are historical references in the Bible, or there are references to real places in the Bible, does not mean the claim about God from the Bible is true. That's the exact same thing as saying that's the exact same argument as saying Spider-Man lives in New York. New York is a real place. Spider-Man therefore exists.
No, like, that's ridiculous. It has nothing to do with what I'm talking about. I'm saying, like, prophecy, for instance.
I'm saying you can't cite the Bible. The Bible is
No,
not evidence.
Yes, I can. I can do whatever I want to do.
Dietrich, the Bible is the claim.
No, it's not the claim. God is
yes,
the claim.
It is the claim.
Don't say that. No, it's not.
Yes, it is.
The title says God, not the Bible.
You said there are correct things in the Bible, like historically accurate things, right? And you're saying that this is reason to believe that all of the claims in the Bible are more likely to be true, like the God thing, right?
Yeah, there's claims in the Bible, like prophecy, that we can, like, we can just verify historically.
Prophecy would be better, but, like, the historical claims, like certain events and locations that are correct, that part isn't what you're talking about. You're talking about specifically about the prophecies?
Okay, yes, prophecies, like, for instance, God telling them you're going to be in slavery for this long, right? And then, lo and behold, like, it's that long. So that's something that if you can verify the date that this was written, then would
and they were written down after the fact, so we cannot eliminate the possibility of post-diction.
Yeah, sorry, say that one more time.
I said these stories were written down after the fact, so they already knew how long they were in captivity, and then they were released, and they were written down after the fact, so we cannot eliminate the possibility of post-diction.
Okay, so you think that's possible, All right, that's fair.
It's
And that's why we would.
It's absolutely possible.
Okay, look, I hear you, but I'm saying, this is, in these things, I would say that you should look. Like, have you looked into like historical Christian?
Yes.
Like Christian history?
Yes, at length. Just like I know that the Book of Daniel had a 6th century setting, but was written in the 2nd century. So everything that occurs in the Book of Daniel was not prophecy. That was written down after the fact, after all these events had taken place. So Daniel's dreams about, and Nebuchadnezzar's dream about the statue, and the Daniel's dream about the beast rising out of the sea. Number one, they don't correlate because they don't reference Rome. And 2, they were written down much after the fact, and they're generally considered to be stories they're like oral traditions that were told and then written down after the fact. So no, there's no prophecies there. It's post-diction. Not to mention, there's no indication that the individual spoken about in Daniel is Christ, and there's no correlation between the two. It's just that, and then Christ coming along and saying that he's fulfilling the prophecy. Christ would already know about the prophecy because this was Jewish oral tradition in the Torah from the books of Moses. So Christ, being a Jew, would be already aware of this. And so him saying that he's doing it is post-diction. That's hindsight bias. So no, they're not prophecies.
Okay, so your scholars tell you that it was written after, and mine tell me before. So there's some disputes here.
What was written before?
No, there's no dispute in this.
Can
we can
name a book?
trace the book back to the 2nd century, roughly about, I think it's 265 BC or 265 BCE, before Common Era.
Which book do you think was written?
The book of Daniel.
No, I'm asking him. Which book does he think was written before whenever?
Which book do I think was written?
Yeah, which book do you think that has the prophecies that were written before the prophecies happened?
You're talking about the book of Daniel, right?
Yeah, I mean, I think all the books in the Bible are like have historical accuracy in them. I don't think any of them are.
There is some historical accuracy in some of the stories. They talk about places that actually existed before they fell. They talk about cities that once existed. But just because they reference places that existed in reality, you're talking about people writing a book, and then they're going to talk about the places around them. Well, that's fine. You can do that. But saying that proves divinity or proves that God exists is the exact same as saying that Spider-Man exists in New York. New York is a real place, therefore Spider-Man exists. So it's the same thing as saying Tyr is a place that exists, and it says it in the Bible, and God exists in the Bible, therefore God exists. That doesn't follow.
Okay, listen. So if there was one prophecy in the Bible, which, as far as we could conclude based on evidence, came to pass according to its own written admission, would you consider that an evidence for the existence of prophecy?
No, I would not.
It depends.
Okay, so what you're saying here is you have an axiomatic disposition towards prophecy because of a materialistic, reductionistic, like phenomenal,
I actually don't.
Idealism.
No, I actually don't. It's a matter of the veracity of the claim and the accuracy of the claim, and how I guess how much is within the claim, like how much do they predict? Predicting empires will fall is not a prediction. That's an observation about reality. Okay.
But that's not. I didn't say anything about that specifically. I told you if A equals A, does A equal A, and you told me no. So yes, axiomatically, you have a dogma.
No, that's not what I said at all. You said prophecy. You said prophecy. And you said if there was a prophecy that came true, does that mean all prophecies are true? No, that does not. It just means somebody guessed something and it came true. I can't differentiate the difference between a guess based upon empirical observation and an actual prophecy, because I can't eliminate the possibility of hindsight bias. So no.
Okay. Well, I think you, like, for instance, you have a different standard again of what you would accept. So even you just said, even if you saw in the Bible somewhere where it says like this specific thing is going to happen according to this time period, and this is why, and then it happens, you're saying you will wholesale reject that could be supernatural. And then you also want to tell me that's not, because of your general sentiment about, the supernatural world.
It's not my general sentiment. It's not my general sentiment.
I can't provide you with evidence.
No, Dietrich, I have to be able to eliminate other possibilities in order to say that this was an actual prophecy. And the problem is, in the Bible, you can't do that.
So yes, he would accept.
You cannot eliminate the possibility of hindsight bias. So no, you don't get to rest on that.
So if you had a
Yeah, but
genuine
you're
prophecy,
shifting.
one sec. If you had a genuine prophecy that was written before the event and was specific, that would be good evidence. And I think JL would probably agree with that. We just, as far as we know, we don't have any of those. Do you think you have one?
I believe that like there's plenty of references to who Jesus was going to be, and like the fact that his the circumstances of his birth and
Give
the
me a good
nature of his
prophecy.
death as well. So, for
You're
instance,
actually incorrect about
in the
this.
Psalms,
You're incorrect about this because he is
Let
never
him give the
referenced by
example
name,
first.
and he's never referenced by name anywhere other than the Gospels.
Let him give the example first. What do you think is a really good prophecy? Give me any verse.
okay. So, for instance, Isaiah 53 kind of gives an explanation of who Jesus is generally agreed to be in the Bible, and this was written far beforehand. So, as far as I can tell, it makes sense that that was adequately predicting who Jesus would be as professed by the disciples.
Where? Which
That's
part? Give
something
me a
that's
sentence.
fairly important to me. Okay, so Isaiah 53, it mentions that he was bruised for our iniquities, and that he was the propitiation for our sins. These are the things that Jesus Christ himself professed, and who was also, there was a testimony given that he was, in fact, like the representation of all these things. So, like, I tell that to Jews and stuff because I do think it's a good place where we can see, even in the Old Testament, outside of the New Testament, where
So
there
it
is
says a
something
guy was
indicating
bruised.
what
Says a
the
guy was
person like
bruised.
Jesus is accredited as.
So,
so
T-Jump, Isaiah 53 is, but he was pierced for our transgressions, he was crushed for our iniquities. The punishment that brought us peace was on him, and by his wounds we are healed. And there's no indication
The whole
that this is that's Isaiah 53. Or that's Isaiah 53.
Yeah, there's nothing about sins there. You lied, Dietrich.
There's
You
nothing
said
about
something
sin.
about sins.
There's nothing about sins in that. Hang on a sec. There's nothing about sins in that. There's nothing about Christ in that. It doesn't give an allusion to any particular person. And if someone came along, because this was in the Torah, Jesus would have been aware of this. And then if Jesus deliberately, having this knowledge, attempted to bring this about, then that's not prophecy.
Yeah, it says, because of our sins he was wounded, beaten up because of the evil that we did. We are healed by the punishment he suffered, made whole by the blows he received. So if you want to be reductionistic and like tear this apart, that's up to you.
If I read a prophecy that was written 1,000 years ago, and I read this prophecy, it's like, wow, this is amazing, and I believe this, and then I deliberately take steps to bring that prophecy about. It eliminates it as prophecy because I have foreknowledge. I'm affecting conclusions with my prior knowledge.
Which
and therefore it is no longer prophecy.
I'm lost. Which parts in that phrase does it prophesy that there are bruises and a guy got stabbed in his hands? Were those the only two things that were actual prophecies in there? Because I'm
doesn't even say his hands. Just says
no,
he was
it's the
pierced
whole
for our
it's the whole thing. But it
which
says
sentence is the
in
prophecy?
Isaiah 53, 5, verse 5. Well, no, like this
What
is
is
describing the Messiah. This is what's generally agreed upon. Even today, Jews will teach you that this is what this is referring to.
Dietrich, a
You know that?
prophecy. You need to predict something about the future that's specific. What is the specific thing that this is predicting about the future that we can verify?
The Messiah. So that's not just our opinion as Christians. It's also what the Jews believe.
No, I don't like what sentences in here are things that we can verify happened in the future that don't apply to literally tens of thousands or millions of people, that we can specifically say this is a prophecy. What because the only things I see here are a guy was bruised and stabbed, and that was about it. I don't see anything else that we can verify here, and that applies to literally hundreds of millions of people. What is the prophecy?
Well, I think you have it does require like trying to view it in a holistic way. Yeah, and say this sounds like the person of Christ. It's like to me it's a natural inference, but to you, you're saying you're not proving anything here.
No,
and again, this is why I pushed you in the beginning.
I'm not saying that. I'm saying I don't even understand what you're saying. I can't read in these sentences anything that I can look for in the future and say, yep, there's one that identifies this prediction. There's no prediction there. Like scientists make a prediction. The comet will come around every 553 years. Wait 553 years. There's the comet. That's a good prediction. What is the prediction made in any of this?
Oh, okay. So, like for instance, it says right here, the Lord says, "It was my will that he should suffer. His death was a sacrifice to bring forgiveness, And so he will see his descendants, he will live a long life, and through him my purpose will succeed. After a life of suffering, he will again have joy. He will know that he did not suffer in vain. And it goes on.
Okay,
So
so
this
it
is
seems
a
that's
specific prophecy where
so,
the
wait,
Lord is speaking.
So it seems like the events that were prophesied there was that someone will suffer and die and be reborn. Those were the three events essentially.
And also what they did. So as
They
we
don't
know
say anything
from
specific as to what they did to him. There's no mention
yeah,
of the
what do you
crown
mean?
of thorns. There's no mention of the crucifixion.
Okay. Well, again,
There's
what
no
you're
mention
doing
of the
is
flogging
you
that
have
took place
you
before
have a
that. So
skeptical mindset. You have a skeptical mindset.
No,
So
no,
you're saying
no, it's not.
you
It's not
haven't
about having a
described it
skeptical
exactly.
mindset. It's about what can we derive? What conclusion can we derive from what we are presented? And you are making leaps here. And besides the fact that the Jews don't even think that Christ was the Messiah, so
no, that's a different question. They think
Dietrich,
that the Messiah was Israel.
one sec.
So it's the same. It's the same difference.
Remember when we were talking earlier? You said if you gave us an example of a prophecy that said something very specific happens. Specific is the important word here. Specific means it applies to a very small number of cases. So far, based off of the words that you've read, it applies to pretty much anyone who's ever worshipped a god ever and suffered and died. That's about. I don't see like what is specific about this.
Okay, so first you were saying, well, it's not a real prophecy. Then I,
Yes,
just
it's
now
not specific.
read where it specifically says that this is what the Lord is saying and what He will do, which is by definition a prophecy. And now then I made an inference, right? And I empathize that you don't want to read that into the text because you think presuppositionally that it can't be in there. So
I want
you're
the
seeing
text
it
to
that
say
way.
it. I want the text to say it.
You can't say that it's impossible either.
Dietrich,
you can't say that at least.
Dietrich, for something to be a prophecy, it has to be specific. If it's not specific, it's not a prophecy. Anything that's ambiguous can apply to millions of different things. Like if I say somebody named Bob in the future will knock on my door, that's not a prophecy. That's just a guess because it could happen at any point in time. For it to be a legitimate prophecy, it has to be specific. If it's not specific, it's not a legitimate prophecy. So what you need to give me is something in the Bible that says this specifically will happen in the future, and then it happens in the future. Simply saying a guy will suffer and die is like saying Bob will knock on my front door. That's not a prophecy. That's not evidence of anything. Like I'll give you a really good example. In Hinduism, it guesses the age of the earth was 4.3 billion years ago. That's like 95% accurate. That's a very good prophecy. Yours are garbage. Guy will die and suffer. Like, wow, amazing. No one in the history of humanity could ever have guessed that. Like, you got to give me something more than guy suffered and died.
Can you at least
what you're doing
verse
is
that Moses wrote, because Jesus said that Moses wrote about him?
Okay, so you keep reducing what I'm saying down and like trying to flatten it out. Well, there's two of you talking at the same time, so I can't speak out of both sides of my mouth. But what you're doing is
that's not what that phrase means.
You're not being charitable, because what I'm exposing is that the Christ that we can attest to in Christianity is the same here as in this verse. So it's not just that someone will die, where it's very specific about what that means for us, and that is who is attested to in the scripture. Now I respect. Okay, wait.
Dietrich,
I respect.
This is an emotional appeal. Okay, what it means to you. What we're talking about is looking at the book and looking at the claim and looking at what Isaiah says, and then looking at what you're saying about Christ. Okay, and we have to look at all the evidence that we have available to us. And the evidence we have available to us is that the books of Moses were written. The person known as Christ or Yeshua was born. Yeshua would be aware of the Torah and would be aware of the prophecy of someone being sacrificed or someone coming along and preaching these things. So if Christ went about doing this on purpose, knowing full well that the prophecy existed, and he said, I'm going to fulfill the prophecy, that eliminates it as prophecy because he is using prior knowledge to affect outcomes, to affect circumstances. That eliminates it as prophecy and cements it as hindsight bias.
Okay, so if I walk around and say I'm the president, are you going to believe me?
If you just walk around saying you're the president and you're not actually the president of the United States, no, I will not believe you. If you say I'm going to be the president, okay, and then you take steps to become elected, and then you become the president, that's not prophesizing. You're just saying I'm making a prediction about reality, and then I made that prediction come true.
Yeah. So just because somebody would come along and say, yeah, I'm the person from Isaiah 53, doesn't mean anybody would believe them. The real question is why we have 8 billion people who agree that he was.
No, hang on a second. You hit a very good point there. Doesn't mean everybody would believe him. And guess what? Only a handful of people believed him. And the teachings he gave were at the time. And then the teachings that he was espousing were considered heretical. And so he was then executed for heresy. Okay? And then
you mean the prophecy was fulfilled?
No, it wasn't. It means that if Christ is there, Dietrich, stop. If Christ was aware of the prophecy and he knew that preaching heresy could result in his death, and then he died, it's literally he made it come true because he used prior knowledge, and then it resulted in an outcome that he was fully anticipating. Okay.
Well, anyway,
so
the
you
point
can't
is,
eliminate this possibility, but it doesn't matter because at the time, not a whole bunch of people believed him, and that's why he was executed for it, because it was considered heresy. And then the reason Christianity spread was because of the Roman Empire, because it's easier to convince people. It's essentially flies and honey. It's essentially vinegar and honey. You can convince people if you're spreading Christianity, more people than you can at the tip of a sword. And the war effort was becoming way too problematic for Rome. The empire was getting way too big, and the war effort was costing them out here. The Senate was unhappy with it. The populace was unhappy with it. And so eventually they turned to more diplomatic means of convincing people to submit to the empire, and they used Christianity to do this.
Okay, so again, this is not part of what I was saying. I get
no. It's refuting everything that you're saying. No, it's refuting your argument for popularity. It's refuting your argument for prophecy.
You haven't actually given a source, but you're providing an alternative view, and then you're saying this is also possible. But the only reason I'm saying that
is the actual case.
Okay. The reason why I brought this up was because I wanted to try to give an example of something that is considered to be a prophecy
which we debunked.
I'm not saying you have to now believe it.
We debunked it.
This was just supposed to be a pit stop, so we can move on to the next one.
Dietrich, we debunked it. So, do you have anything?
You can believe that if you want, right? Because I'm not trying to convince you. I was giving you an example.
Well, let me try to explain this a little more. So, if I make a prophecy that there is a dog who is going to walk in front of my front lawn and it's going to poop out all of our sins, and my religion is true of my religion, and just dogs do this every day. They come in front of our lawn, and then this dog that poops out our sin is going to suffer and die. And let's say in 300 years, 3,000 years, whatever, there's a group of 1 million people who all worship a dog who died in front of my lawn. Now, obviously, there's 1 million dogs who did this in the course of my life, and just one of them happened to die. And if I just attributed that to my religion, that doesn't actually mean this was a prophecy, because this is a thing that happens all the time, and we just picked one of the ones that it happened to, and we believed in it. So does the fact that this prophecy is so vague, it applies to things that happen literally every day, because there are millions of Jews who were tortured and killed by the Romans, and you could have just picked any one of them and said, you know what, that one died for our sins, and that's relevant to us, and then use that to foster a religious belief. And then it'd be really popular, because it's happened all the time, happens all over the world. People die, and then you idolize them, and that's how most religions start. So the fact that this prediction was made, that a person would suffer and die for our sins, and then you pick any Christian who suffers and dies, and you build a religion off of that. This isn't a prophecy because it happens so often that it isn't specific. For it to count as a prophecy of any kind, it's any kind of prophecy at all, it has to be specific, not a thing that happens a lot. And your religious inclinations of how you feel it's significant to you, and that millions of people now or billions of people now follow Jesus, isn't a confirmation of the prophecy. It's just taking a guy who died in Christianity and then building a religion off of that, which is literally how all religions form. So again, for it to be a prophecy, it has to be something specific, like in Hinduism predicting the age of the earth 4.3 billion years. That's a very good prophecy. Yours is a guy will suffer and die and lots of people will follow him in the future. That's all you predicted. That every religion fits that criterion.
Okay. So I understand what you're saying, and in that it's not, for instance, giving you equals MC squared, right? Or something like highly specific, telling you there will be a man named Einstein and he will give you equals MC squared.
Yeah, that would have been a
Like
great
that's
prediction.
very specific,
Great
right?
prediction.
That's extremely specific. Hard to say it's not exact, like literally just true.
Right.
But there are other examples. I just wanted to bring that up as a testimony to the person of Christ. That was the real reason I brought that one out first. And then, the other one that I hear is that there was a time in which the Romans were trying to go against, I think it was Italy, and Italy actually retreated to a small island outside of Italy, like a peninsula. And so it was predicted in the Bible that this place would be completely destroyed. And it was also stated that the city would be torn down completely, and that the stones would be thrown into the ocean. And in fact, the way that they were finally defeated after moving onto this island was that they took the large stones from these buildings, and then they threw them into the water to make a land bridge, and then they finished them off there. So, to me, that's another example of a highly specific prophecy. The reason that I don't normally talk about this stuff is because I'm not a historian. So anytime I speak about this, even if I've heard it's true, I don't know for a fact, and also I can't sit here and claim that I'm more of an expert than somebody else. Does that make sense? I just remember this conversation started with me asking about what's your evidentiary standard.
You realize the city of Tyre was never destroyed, right?
Oh, I believe that's incorrect.
The city of Tyre was never destroyed.
The city of Tyre? No, I believe that's incorrect. I spoke with Eisenhower about this anyway, and anyway, this is exactly why I don't.
It's one of the
bring this
prophecies
stuff
that was
up.
never fulfilled.
Hey, okay, so yeah, I know I've heard Luca make that claim, and then when we looked it up, I'm pretty sure I found the evidence, but right now I don't have the sources, so I'm happy to move on from that point. But the reason I brought this up was because we were talking about evidence, and then TJump said there is no evidence. So I wanted to firstly start off by saying that we can look to the Bible and try to make confirmations of the claims that are there to try to meet that standard. And then I wanted to ask about other forms of evidence. What other forms of evidence do you think would be convincing for any of you?
That's problematic. Oh, go ahead, TJ. I'm sorry.
Other than novel Tesla predictions, pretty much nothing, because you kind of need those.
Okay, so essentially you're doing a wholesale rejection of any form of personal revelation.
Can you share with us your personal experience?
Well,
no, because if it wouldn't convince you to have literally 10,000 angels swarm you and take you up to heaven, then there's absolutely no reason for me to tell you my experience.
Well, I don't reject personal experience. Science rejects personal experience because we know it fails. It gets things wrong so often that we know it's not a reliable source of data. So that was something we used to use hundreds of years ago. Personal experience was something we did take seriously. And then over the course of developing science, we realized, oh, this is actually a really bad way to do anything. So we don't use it anymore. So personal experience is not a reliable way to differentiate imagination from reality. If you presented any way that could do that in anything, in any method, there does not that forever, never works for that. That's why we don't use it.
Okay, that's why I'm asking you.
That's why eyewitness testimony is considered the weakest form of evidence in court of law.
I wouldn't say it's okay. Well, whatever. I don't care about that. But
it's complete.
I'm asking you.
It's relevant to the point, Dietrich.
Okay, great. So look, I'm asking you a simple question. I'm asking you a simple question. What is there any form of personal experience that you would change your mind or whatever about the topic? Because if it's only history and having an exact prophecy about Einstein, then there's, I'm just curious what else. 'Cause
Are
if
you okay? I'm
anything,
gonna
you
say
would,
okay. So
you would
Dietrich,
be open to.
you're asking, is there any type of personal experience that would convince me automatically that a God exists?
Hmm.
Okay, and I'm telling you, honestly, to be intellectually honest, I don't know. I can tell you of all the things that I can think about of evidence that can be presented as far as personal experience, they only result in more questions. Because I would have to eliminate the possibility of anything else, like having a stroke, having a hallucination, being on drugs, being drugged by someone else without my knowledge, another stuff. There's a bunch of things I have to eliminate first. So any type of personal experience will only open up more inquiry to the intellectually honest. Okay,
So
but I will say this: if your God exists and it has the abilities that you know that, and it has all the abilities you think it has, then it knows what evidence is there and it has yet to present it to me.
Oh, I'd be happy to accept personal experience. Like if I prayed for a gold brick and every time I did, a gold brick appeared, that would make me, I believe, or any kind of novel testable prediction about the ability to pray to a God and have it do stuff that would work. So I'm happy to accept personal experience if it's a novel testable prediction kind of personal experience.
Okay. So, but is that relegated to breaking the law, like miracles,
No,
or could that be something like, let's
like if I
say,
prayed for
what
lottery
is it called?
tickets and I won the lottery 10 times in a row, wouldn't break any laws of physics. That'd be great evidence.
Okay, like let's talk about like synchronicity. Do you think that something like that, which is fairly hard to define?
I don't know what you mean.
Okay, well, synchronicity is it's a very timely set of events which has personal meaning, and it was created by Carl Jung, who had a patient that kept having dreams about some type of beetle, a scarab beetle, and then like one day she was in there, like a golden scarab beetle, and then one day she was in there, and like she was having a breakthrough of some kind. And then I don't know, like the golden scarab beetle came, and it had a lot of significant meaning. But it can mean a lot of things. So, like for instance, the largest example of this could be, like scientists say that when the Jews were exiting from Egypt, that there is actually an explanation for why the sea could have parted, and they chalk it up essentially to currents and winds functioning together to temporarily create a land bridge.
It's the Reed Sea.
And then you could say that this is a natural process, but the timing of it is such that it has personal relevance, meaning, and lends itself to the hypothesis that God is working for these people to help them. Would you agree that that would indicate that, or you think it would be pure chance?
Synchronicity is just you have an emotional appeal to some event that happens that's irrelevant. But if Moses said, "I'm going to pray to God to split the sea," and then he splits the sea, that's a novel testable prediction. That not synchronicity. That's just basic evidence. So if you could make novel predictions like God's going to split the sea when we get here, and it happens, yes, that would be great evidence, even if it was just the wind or something. So novel predictions, great. Synchronicity don't matter. It's not, the emotional relevance to your life is completely irrelevant. What matters is if you can predict some event will happen in the future, and it's not already known, and it happens, like parting the sea. That'd be great.
Okay, so you're saying that if it was caused by nature, that you would still consider that to be
evidence
that would lend itself towards the hypothesis for God.
Yeah, so if you can predict future events that no one else can predict, and because of a hypothesis of God or whatever, that still would be evidence of God. You might have to do like a lot of them to make it sufficient to believe in God, but that would be evidence.
Okay, so I also wanted to ask about, I think I have an idea where you guys sit as far as your skepticism. So, I mean, it sounds pretty rational, I guess. You're trying to just come to an empirical conclusion based on facts and not so much feelings and or whatever else. But what really caught my eye earlier was that, or my ear, is that there seemed to be resistance to Luca's questions, where he would ask you, okay, well, can you dive into a little more like why this is bad or why there's an obligation? And then the answer was essentially, well, it's just obvious to me. But if I were to tell you that it's just obvious to me that God exists, what would you say?
Well, you're sort of right here. So I think Amy was missing the point of what Luca was asking, and when I answered it, he was just delusional. But yeah, Luca was asking, why is divine command theory wrong? Because if divine command theory is right, then God is right to drown babies. Totally fine for him to drown babies. And the argument we're making has nothing to do with arguing some kind of moral ontology that divine command theory is wrong. We're using cognitive dissonance to be like, you think drowning babies is wrong. You feel it in your heart. And so it creates a cognitive dissonance to think that God did that. We're not arguing divine command theory is wrong with some kind of moral ontology. We're saying intuitionally, we understand drowning babies is wrong. God drowned babies to create cognitive dissonance. So, and that's what I told him, but he wasn't listening. And so we just kept asking the same question over and over again. And Amy was presenting why it's has cognitive dissonance to think that drowning babies is a good thing. And we never really addressed the point. Like, I'm a moral realist, so I can present an argument against divine command theory, but that's not usually the reason atheists bring up the drowning babies. It's mostly our appeal to reductio ad absurdum, to create cognitive dissonance between the beliefs of the individual. It's not about a moral theory against divine command theory.
Okay, so when you say you're a moral realist, that means you think morals are. Does that mean that you think you can derive morals from function?
Moral realist just means they believe in objective morality, that moral statements are true objectively, independent of opinion.
Objectively, but what does objectively mean?
It means different things to different people. Objective means it's true independent of opinion or intuition or mind. It's like a fact of reality.
Okay, according to what operation? Or
operation?
Operation.
I have no idea what you mean by operation. Like, there are different kinds of moral realists.
It's a good board game.
It's like, yeah, operation. Like Platonic moral realism thinks it's a Platonic object. Something is like God's nature. Something it's a law of, like a thing in physics. Moral naturalism. Like, there's lots of different versions of moral realism.
Yeah, so I'm asking you specifically.
Yeah, I think it's a thing in physics. I think it's morality is a combination of physics stuff.
So, are you a proponent of natural law then?
What? I think, like, you mean physics? Yes.
No, I'm asking you about natural law. Do you believe that,
like laws of physics, natural laws of physics?
Okay, well, you may be reading into that more than other people would who also believe in physics, right? So I'm asking you, how are you defining right and wrong from, let's say, man's natural ability to be autonomous or free thinking? And then, how do you derive that is a good thing or like that's something that's natural per se?
Well, so we're looking at the evidence of morality, which is moral intuition and moral progress, and we try to plot out the data points on a graph and see if there's a pattern and describe the pattern with a principle, and then infer from the principle what, like, the extremes are. That's the same thing we do with anything.
Well, okay, so you're saying that you simply go by cultural or like the human's natural instincts, and from that you determine what's right or wrong.
No, we go with moral intuition and moral progress. So moral progress is not about human instincts. It's about how things change over time. And that's all everyone has. There's nothing else. There is no other, and philosophical dilemmas and moral dilemmas. But other than that, that's all there is. Every single model uses that. There is nothing else to go off of. The Bible just asserts God as the grounds of these things. But all models say there are these things, and they try to explain why there are these things.
Okay, so like are you going to say that progress is going to be defined by utility?
No, progress. This is just a pattern in the change. Progress is a label for a pattern in the change that we see.
Can you give an example?
Yeah, so it's like women's rights, LGBT rights, gay rights, trans rights, ending slavery, women's rights, voter rights, workers' rights. It seems like there's a pattern in the way that morality changes over time, and it's the same pattern every time. And this pattern, we're going to call it progress. You can call it whatever you want, but the pattern goes in one direction and not the other direction.
Okay, so it sounds like you're pretending that there's correlation where there's causation.
No, I'm seeing a pattern. The pattern is there regardless of whether there is causation or if it's just correlation. So we look at the pattern, and the pattern exists, and then we try to infer what's causing the pattern. Is it just evolution? Is there something more behind it, like God's nature or a moral law? Like, we're trying to say, okay, there's a pattern. We see the pattern. All the data indicates the pattern. Now, is what's causing the pattern?
Okay, but like, is there an end? Is there like a higher, like, is there an end goal or an ideal world under your evolutionary model where there's objective morality?
Evolutionary models aren't objective morality typically. So mine is not evolutionary. It's a law of physics kind of a thing. And yes, you can follow this pattern to the extreme and say, well, if we kept going on this pattern, where would it end? And we can say, oh, that would be the best moral world. So yes, there would be a end point, an objective end point.
Okay. Okay. Would that end point look anything like the morals outlined in the Bible?
No, because that's horrible.
Okay, so what would it look like if not that?
It would be impossible to force anyone to do anything they don't consent to doing.
It would be impossible to force somebody into doing something that they don't consent to doing.
Yeah, it's close enough.
So you want anarchy is what you're saying.
No, I want it to be impossible to force anyone to do anything they don't consent to doing. So like no murder, no rape, no thievery, no hurting other people without their consent, no harm, no death, no aging. It'd be impossible to force anyone to do anything they don't consent to doing.
So you want to change the nature of man to make him unable to will to do things which are contrary to other people.
No, you can will anything you want. So
well-being.
Willing is still free. You can will to do anything. And again, you're trying to change the nature of man when you go to heaven, remember, because you lose all the sin stuff. So you're actually changing the nature of man. Mine doesn't do that. Mine says you have all of the free will stuff, if there was free will. The only difference is that it's physically impossible to act on that to hurt other people. So Hitler could still exist and desire to kill all the Jews. It would just be physically impossible for him to actually kill the Jews unless they consented. So all of your desires are the same.
Okay, so you want a world where it's impossible to say start a house on fire, right?
Unless the owner consents to it.
This is really strange. Like the fact that you think this is possible seems like a
Well,
far cry from scientifically provable, testable theories or ways to confirm that it is true.
You believe in an all-powerful being who can create infinitely many universes. Obviously, if God existed, this would be possible. And yes, it is possible under the natural world. We can do it if we control the laws of physics. But again, that's still significantly easier than an all-powerful being who has infinitely many universes he could create. Obviously, he could do this. This is not even like a hard thing for God to potentially do. It'd be very, very easy. So
yeah,
arguing it's not possible.
That's not the question.
You said it was
totally
not
not the
possible.
question.
Clearly, it's
Yeah,
possible. Even under your worldview, it's possible.
It's not possible for you.
Yes, it is.
God, I'm starting with God, who's all powerful. So clearly, it'd be much easier, based on my like worldview. But you don't have that, so it's not nearly as possible or realistic for you.
Two different things here. One is that, again, this is saying if we follow the pattern to its extreme, is there an extreme? Which is yes. Whether or not we can get there is a completely irrelevant question. We can. There are ways to do this naturally with the laws of physics and science, and we don't need a God to do it. We humans can do this, but that's a different question. The question is if we follow the pattern, is there an extreme? Yes, there is an extreme. There is an objectively moral end point, and you don't need a God to get there. But again, God could have done this easily, so it's clearly possible.
Yeah, well, I don't see why you're like why or how you hold to these truths. They're like these things as truths, like because based on your standard of evidence, it would seem that you'd have to be able to demonstrate this in a scientifically testable, repeatable, and demonstrable way.
Yes,
but you seem to be holding to it as a dogma of sorts.
It's a hypothesis. So I look at the data and I say, if this data continues, then it will be this extreme endpoint. And I make predictions that if this is the case, we will discover morality in other species, like other aliens or AIs when we invent them, that will have the same pattern of morality. And so I do make predictions which are confirmable in the future, which can indicate that this is correct. So I do hold this to my standard.
Okay. Yeah, I feel like it's I guess a weird thing for you to hold to.
I'm sure you do.
Yeah, but I understand that's what you'd say about me as well. So
Yeah.
yeah, I mean, I think for most people, as far as being convinced, it wouldn't be that they read, they just read something in the Bible. I think for even if people have a large amount of evidence, in order to be convinced, it requires some element of meaning as well, because that's kind of the whole point of the Bible, is that life does have intrinsic meaning, and that we can have access to it. So I don't see how other philosophies get to that, or like how they justify it, and that's why I kind of brought up Luca and his line of questioning. Then there's people like you who have theories that try to bring it into harmony at least.
And they do.
But
So like most philosophers are moral realists. The most philosophers are atheists, like 70%ish, and most philosophers are moral realists, like 60 something percentish. So most philosophers who are atheists also believe in moral realism. So most people believe in meaning and value without a God. You don't need a God for that. Most academics.
Yeah, I agree that people know that there's morality, that people understand that there's right and wrong. But Luca, for instance, who doesn't believe in any of those things, according to evolution or according to a world which just exists, I don't see how you can ever challenge him on that. I don't see how you can ever go, yeah, that's demonstrably, objectively false. Whereas the theist always has the designer to or ascribe a function or obligation to whatever is created.
Your designer
So-
isn't demonstrable, so you couldn't demonstrably show him false. Whereas I'm making novel predictions which are confirmable in the future, and if mine are confirmable in the future, we could actually show this, because I think it's like a law of physics that we can actually measure in the future. In which point we can yeah, you're objectively wrong because here's the literal thing.
Well, it would be circular, right? Because you would just have a definition. Like for instance, pragmatists, they say truth is just whatever's useful. So that's useful, therefore it's true. Like we predicted that this would be useful, and it was. Therefore, our theory is demonstrable.
Well, no, I'm saying I think
so-
morality is caused by a law of physics. We will literally be able to discover the law of physics just like every other law of physics, so we can literally measure it. It's not what's
measure.
circular.
Did you say the law of physics?
Yeah, I think there's a moral law, like there is a gravitational law and electromagnetic laws. I think that the moral law is like a law of physics, like every other law in physics. It's not the same as they're all different laws, but it is a law.
And I'm assuming you probably think it'd be something like E equals MC squared, right? Like it wouldn't be terribly complex, would it?
I have no idea about the complexity. E equals MC squared is actually really complex, but the representation through math is, I think, just our current level of physics. I don't think necessarily all physics will always be representation through math.
Okay, well, I'm referring to, let's say, if it was expressed through the logic of math, you think that you probably would say it'd be probably pretty concise, right?
No.
No? Okay.
I mean,
well,
if you look at the derivations of E equals MC squared, it is not concise. It is extremely complicated.
Well, sure, but I'm just saying, like the final. Okay, the reason I'm saying this is because I'm trying to say that essentially it's almost like you're describing an entire system which exists and has very easy to understand things that the mind can understand and learn about. Sure. And then it's like you don't want to make this step that the reason why we can understand those things and the reason why we can we have the wisdom to like understand the most foundational principles of the universe, including why we have morality, isn't because we were given the keys to the kingdom. Like,
yeah, because that doesn't
to
make
me,
any
that's
sense.
From your position, it's like we found a car, we can drive it, like it has all the functions we need, but that car made itself. And to me, that's where I don't buy it.
Well, no,
because the only way for me to have foundation for my beliefs is considering that things make sense because they're supposed to be that way, like, or because that was like it's just like a puzzle piece. There's only one puzzle piece missing, so to me that's the shape of God, right? But
that doesn't make any sense.
And
like we're in the universe. Our brains are a product of the universe. So our brains being able to understand the universe is because they're literally a part of it. So like our brains couldn't evolve the ability to imagine a round square, because it's literally not possible for anything in the universe to do that, and our brains are a thing in the universe, and so obviously our brains representations are going to in some way represent the universe. That's why it's intelligible. That's why we can function in it. That's why we understand things, because our brains are literally one of the things inside of the universe. So obviously it's going to operate in an intelligible way of the universe because it is a part of the universe. You don't need a God for any of that.
Yeah, I don't. That's where of course we disagree. Everything's laid out. Like, you even think we can understand the deepest secrets of the universe. But then you say, well, that's just because we happen to be made out of dirt. And to me, that seems like an inference that could be true, but isn't necessarily true.
Why would you
So,
think it requires a God to do any of those things?
well, so like, we see that, like, you would agree even that there are functions in the world that truly exist, like men and women procreate, that's male and female. And
Sure.
do you agree with, like, abortion, or do you agree with
Well, I'm pro-choice, but yeah, what
homosexuality?
Yes, I agree with homosexuality. But what is, like, how does this lead to we need God for these things to understand these things?
Okay. So yeah. So for instance, with homosexuality, I think maybe this is where we would be different, because you would claim that you have some sort of objective reality, but then when you see that males and females are supposed to reproduce, you wouldn't go on to the next step and say that's how it's supposed to be.
Right.
You would say, well, we're able to do whatever we want.
Yes.
So, yeah, that's where it would seem like you don't have like any sort of absolute grounding, as you claim you do, for your morality.
Wait. So that's a different question. First of all, moral laws aren't all laws, and so some laws could be different or cause different things than the moral laws. There's no contradiction there. Like, clearly, I'm not saying the moral law governs everything and is a force that controls all other forces, because then, yeah, immorality would be impossible. But my question to you was, why do you think you need a God for intelligibility or morality or any of those things? Because that doesn't make any sense.
It's not that I need God to perceive that something is necessarily, like, not the way things are supposed to be. It's just that, like, in order to justify the reason that I do see them that way, and that's how it actually is, that would mean that the purpose or the meaning that I'm seeing there would have to exist in reality. Like, that meaning or that reality that I'm observing has to be at least analogical to something that is real. Otherwise, it's just a construct, and there's no way for me to ultimately know or have a good reason for believing that meaning that I'm perceiving is relevant or true.
Well, so my worldview is that there is literally a law of physics that is like morality, and it literally interacts with our brains just like light and gravity do. And our brains then construct a model of the world based off of those things, which gives us knowledge of the way the world is. So it seems like I can do all of those things. I don't need a God. So I'm not sure why you think God is required for any of that.
Okay, you're asserting this to be true. For what reason?
In my worldview, we have brains and laws of physics, and the laws of physics interact with our brains via mediums like light and particles and stuff.
That's not a justification for why you think that you perceive is true.
Why I think what I receive is true? Like, because I can't imagine all false things. So, like, I can't imagine a round square. I can't believe I exist and be wrong. And so there are certain foundational beliefs that can't be wrong, and I can build off of those to build other beliefs that are more reasonable or rational. Like, we need some way to differentiate imagination from reality, and then I can come up with a method to do that, which is science, and I can use science to differentiate the things in reality that we can believe are there and the things that are just imaginary, and I can build a worldview called naturalism.
Okay, but you're still saying that observationally, like, observation is enough to conclude what should be. So what's your response to the is-ought problem?
Well, I don't think it is a problem. I think there are two separate categories, but I'm not sure, like, I'm lost on your question here, because your question was something like, how do I know what's true? And like, if I imagine I was to ask you that question, you'd probably say, because God told me so, or something. And I could just say the same thing. The universe told me so, or the universe caused my brain to develop in a way that develops true facts.
No, that's not. I'm not saying you don't observe things, and I do. I'm saying your reason for believing that actually adheres to reality to me seems like an unfounded assumption, and ultimately can't lead you to confidence in your beliefs.
Why do you think that your beliefs correspond to reality?
Well, again, we agree that we can look at things and perceive them, and then we can say, like, make conclusions about those things in general. So, like, we'd probably both observe that somebody tried for something that they did not do.
What
is bad? That's not correct.
No.
We
So my
shouldn't do those
question
things.
was, why do you think you are justified in believing you're not in the Matrix? Why do you think your beliefs and experiences of the world are true and not a figment of your imagination?
Well, I would have no reason not to think that I was in the Matrix, unless the world was grounded by something outside of myself. So I adhere that the truth exists outside of me, and that in order for things to actually be intelligible, that's grounded in some higher truth.
Sure, the
than
quantum
me.
field.
And
So quantum field is outside of me. Truth is outside of me.
right,
It created
and
my
also,
brain.
yeah, and also the things that I perceive are necessarily mapped onto that mind, because that's what it is. Like, that's who God is, in a sense.
Okay, I'm totally lost now, because
necessarily.
It's definitely not necessarily, because necessarily means there's no logical possibility to the contrary, and there's clearly, you can imagine that God gave you a lie or something, or that an evil God just told you something false, because clearly evolution doesn't give us accurate beliefs. So it's definitely not necessarily the case. My question to you is, why do you think believing in a ultimate mind thingy who tells you stuff is a more rational justification for true beliefs than science and direct experience of the universe giving our brains information?
I think it's necessary. That's my worldview. So therefore, I have a justification for why and how I know that I'm not in the Matrix, whereas you have no reason not to believe you are.
What's necessary?
He just
Okay,
said it was.
so-
He just said it was his worldview. He didn't
Well,
justify it.
Well, what is necessary?
so-
What specific things are necessary?
That God, the mind of God, is the substrate of all things that we can perceive psychologically, and the matter of fact of all things in the natural state of affairs.
So if I said a magical potato fart monster named Bob was a necessary being, does that mean that my belief is now rational?
No, because a fart monster doesn't have a specific nature.
No, it has a very
doesn't-
specific nature. So the question here is simply me asserting that something is necessary.
Its nature doesn't necessarily lead you to
Yes, it
a
does.
world in which we can perceive things
Yes, it does.
and know them as a fact.
Dietrich, he
In fact,
defined it. He defined it as having that.
no,
nature.
a mind which is all good, all loving, and creates. It is also personal. Creates in order to bring others into a relationship is necessarily different than a potato which
Yes,
farts.
it's
okay?
different. It is. Yes,
So
you're right. It's
not
different.
It's not even close. It's the same. If you're going to attack my worldview, at least attack it on what I'm saying.
Let him finish.
I'm not attacking your worldview. I'm saying you have a worldview of a God who has specific properties, and you're going to call that thing necessary. Now, I'm going to make up a different thing. It's not your God. I'm not claiming it's your God. It's a fart potato monster, and the fart potato monster has a nature that it wants to create people and wants to give them direct, accurate experience of reality because it likes farts, and in order to understand and really relish the experience of farts, we have to be able to understand the reality of farts. So it has a nature that would necessarily give us true beliefs about the world because it wants us to understand and comprehend the efficacy of farts. Now, does me simply saying that it has this nature that I've made up and have no evidence for, and does me simply saying it's necessary, give me a rational belief that I have a concrete understanding of reality?
Does you saying that physics necessitates morality justify your claim that that's true?
Well, it doesn't necessitate morality. I never said it did. I said it's based on evidence.
No, you haven't provided any evidence of why you think that we get right morality.
I said moral
Without-
intuition, moral progress. There's a pattern. Follow the pattern. Infer a principle. That's evidence. That's what evidence is in physics. You see a pattern, infer a principle, make predictions. That's what evidence is. I didn't say
Yeah,
it's
but
necessary.
you don't have to affirm that observation matches with the actual state of affairs.
What?
You're just saying it's part of your worldview in the same way that I'm saying that God, who is all good, all living, all knowing, supreme, and eternal, is the justification for my worldview.
Yeah, but mine has
Dietrich,
evidence. Yours doesn't.
Dietrich, how did you determine that God has these attributes?
But I gotta go. I'll see you guys later. Peace out.
Take it easy, TJump.
TJump.
Dietrich.